So, Will, are we ready to get started yet? And there's Craig.
Craig's here, but we're still 2 minutes early. So if you want to wait until 6:30.
So fine.
Back out.
Mhm.
At 6:30, do you want me to go ahead and
Yes, why don't you
give
go
the
ahead?
instructions?
Sure.
All right. Well, welcome everyone. We're happy to have you here. If this is your first time joining us, or maybe this is the first time in a while, we'll give you a reminder of how we run our virtual committee meetings. During these meetings, you'll notice that you are muted, and you're going to stay muted throughout the duration of the meeting, except for whenever either of our co-chairs, Chuck or Craig, call on you. Everybody will be muted except for the presenters as they make their presentations. Following each presentation and as we move through the agenda, the co-chairs will call on members of the public who wish to speak. You can participate by going to the reactions icon and pressing the raise hand button. It's not the wave or the thumbs up, those will disappear. Only press the button once. If you press it a second time, your hand will go back down. If you're calling in from the phone, it is *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute whenever you're called upon. Be on the lookout for a prompt asking you to confirm unmuting once one of the co-chairs calls your name. If you're having problems, the chat is available for technical support only. It is only to help with Zoom software problems. It is not to ask questions of the co-chairs or the presenters. They will never see those chats. If you're using an older version of Zoom, you'll need to go to the participants section where you'll find the raise hand feature there. Finally, we encourage you not to raise your actual hand or wave at the screen to get attention. We may not see you and we may miss you. So if you're having problems, chat me. I'm here to support. And I'll hand it back over to Chuck and Craig.
Thank you. Thanks, Will. I'd like to call the March meeting of the Transportation Committee of Community Board 8 to order. I'm Chuck Warren, co-chair of the committee, and Craig Later, my co-chair, is also here, and we welcome everyone. And we'll try to let everyone who wants to speak get a chance to speak. That's our policy of our committee. First item on the agenda is a presentation from the MTA New York City Transit regarding the upcoming 63rd Street line direct fixation track rehabilitation project. And it's a big project and it's a long name. And do we have people from MTA New York City Transit here to present it?
Yes, we do. Good evening, everyone. My name is Lucille Songhai. I'm with the MTA Government Relations team, and Joshua Rosenberg, who's also on the line, will be giving our presentation from MTA's Operations Planning team. So he'll need his mic unmuted if possible.
I guess he's going to want to share the screen for putting some things in.
And
yes.
While we're unmuting, I was just going to also say that this is an item that is being held joint with our Roosevelt Island Committee. So
Right.
Paul Crickler here representing that committee. So I think he is unmuted as well.
Yeah, and you can go ahead and share your screen, Joshua.
All right, thank you.
I just want to note that all presentations that we are giving this evening, I've actually sent this to Will earlier this evening, but our other presentation that will come second to this, we will also make that available to the community board after the meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, can everyone see the screen?
Yes, Joshua, we can. I
Thank
think
you.
we can see it.
That's good. So we're here tonight to discuss the 63rd Street Line Direct Fixation Track Rehabilitation Project, try saying that 3 times fast, which will be starting up this spring and running through the fall of 2023. So basically, what we are doing is we're replacing direct fixation track. This is track that was installed in 1981 during the 63rd Street Line construction and opened for service in 1989. We replaced sections of the track in 1998 and 2002. This is a specific type of track that was popularized in the 1970s and 80s for less expensive construction. The track is directly attached to the bottom of the tunnel instead of using rails and plates like we do in most of the other system to have the track installed. So that means that it's a little more complicated to replace track, which is why we can't do it on weekends and need a 24/7 access. The track engineering team described it to me like dental work, where once you start, you just have to plow through and finish it. You can't seal it up and have trains run over it after the weekend. So in terms of ridership, about 192,000 customers, or 32% of F riders, travel through this area in 2019. That ridership has obviously taken a dip after the COVID pandemic. Our projected 2023 daily ridership is 132,500, somewhere in that range. And this work will be on the 63rd Street line, the F line between 57th Street, 6th Avenue, and 21st Street, Queensbridge. And we've broken up into phases to try to make it a little less painful. So the mainline track rehabilitation contract was awarded in this December of 2021, also including work on the JZ Archer line, which was completed in 2022. We also did similar work on the E line, finished in 2020 with a different contractor. Railworks is the contractor. The contract duration is 24 months with substantial completion anticipated at the end of this year and a final completion in June. And we finished the J line work on schedule earlier in 2022. So this is sort of work we've been doing and have had success with. And the picture here is of the deteriorated direct fixation track at Lexington and 63rd. So the scope of work, not to get too technical, involves removing existing direct fixation track and constructing new concrete track and new direct fixation track, installing new contact rails, protection boards, brackets, and insulators, removing and replacing cables, furnishing and installing signal equipment, repairing spalled concrete and cracks, and sealing leaks with grouting. So you see the deteriorated track on the sorry, I am scrolling through this too badly, but yeah, you see the deteriorated track on here, and on the right, what rehabilitated track looks like. And we have some more pictures here. You see some cracked bench walls on the 63rd Street line. These plinths, which support the rails, are also showing some wear and tear and deterioration, and this will all be replaced during the outages. And this sort of technical aspects of just having these things here directly tied to the tunnel are why it's so time consuming to replace. We do expect a lot of benefits to our ridership and to the public, improving reliability by replacing age-related deterioration, mitigating leaks to prevent future corrosion and deterioration, and extending service of the existing infrastructure. As you can see in this picture of what we've done on Archer Avenue. So now we're getting into our proposed service plan, which phase 1 is planned to run from May 1st to June 30th. This will close the northbound track, and we will have one-way service around there. The M train will be rerouted to operate in the Manhattan-bound direction through the 63rd Street Tunnel, and the F will run via the 53rd Street line as the E line weekdays. This is in part to help reduce with back riding so that local stations will also be available. And Riders using bypass stations will need to back ride in the opposite direction. So for example, riders going to those stations from Manhattan would go to Steinway Street or to Roosevelt Avenue to change directions. For normal weekday service, we only operate 2 services through 53rd Street, the E and the M. This plan calls for operating 3 services in at least one direction in all the phases. So to accommodate the 3 services, we do need to slightly reduce EF and M frequencies in the peak because of capacity issues in the 53rd Street tunnel, because the regular frequencies that we run with the full tunnels open are more than these tracks can accommodate. We are still evaluating the 53rd Street line capacity with this service to ensure it will operate as smoothly as possible and that there may still be some adjustments to the service plan. And you see a nice map here. Weekends and late nights service is a little different since the M doesn't operate along Queens Boulevard. Nights or weekends, the F replaces what the weekday daytime M does in this phase. The F will be one-way 63rd Street service, Manhattan bound, and 53rd Street Queens bound, and operate local in Queens. And still no Queens bound service at 57th 6th, Roosevelt Island, 21st Street Queensbridge, and Lexington 63rd Street, though the Q will serve this station in both directions. And this service shows the weekend map. The difference on overnights is that there's no R to Queens and the E operates local. Phase 2 is scheduled to run July 1st through August 11th. During this phase, we are moving south between Rockefeller Center or a little north of there and 57th Street and up towards 63rd. So we still are able to run service through there, but we lose the connection between the R line or the F line and the 63rd Street line and 6th Avenue. So we will be having the R to replace the E. So during this phase, trains running along 63rd Street cannot get to 6th Avenue. So the R will be diverted to 63rd Street to provide service. So you see you get bidirectional service at Lexington 63rd Street and Roosevelt Island. Weekdays, since both tracks are out, all EF and M service will operate via 53rd Street and the R will be rerouted via 63rd Street in both directions, including on July 4th when we are anticipating Roosevelt Island needing it for firework crowds on the river. So we'll have full bidirectional service there. It will just be the R train instead of the F train. There is no service at 57th Street, 6th Avenue during this phase as both tracks will be out. And with the R diverted to 63rd Street, no direct connection between Queens Plaza and Lexington 59th Street. We will still have the existing free Metro card and Omni out of system transfer between Lexington 63rd Street and Lexington 59th Street. And again, with 3 services planned to operate on 53rd Street, we will need to reduce peak EF and M due to the track capacities, and we're still evaluating the exact breakdown of that. As in phase 1, the F operation will be different on the weekends to account for no M service along Queens Boulevard on the weekends. The F operates local in Queens, and the R still going on here. Moving on, we have a night map here because night service is a bit different. Neither the M or R normally operate on Queens Boulevard on the overnight. So the main difference here is that the E will operate along 63rd Street and local on Queens Boulevard, but it will terminate at 34th Street on Broadway, again, to provide customer service there. And the F will replace the E in 53rd Street. Phase 3, which is scheduled to run from August 12th to October 13th, is similar to phase 1, just the mirror image. The F will continue to run along 53rd Street in both directions, and the M is reversed from phase 1, operating along 63rd Street Queensbound and along 53rd Street Manhattan bound. There is no Manhattan or downtown service at 57th 6th Avenue, Roosevelt Island, and 21st Street Queensbridge, and Lex 63rd Street will have the Q in both directions, but no downtown service to 6th Avenue. Riders using bypass stations will again need to back ride. And like as in phase 1, phase 3 weekend and night service adjusts for no regular M service along Queens Boulevard during during the weekend or overnight with F operating local and one-way 63rd Street service. This map shows weekend service, and again, the overnights in Queens just have no R in the running local. Other service changes. Obviously, we are continuing our construction, so nights and weekends, there will be other changes to support this project and other maintenance work. So for 63rd Street direct fixation, there are 6 weekends with more extensive closures with both tracks out of service, and the F operating via the 53rd Street E line, where 57-6 will be closed, and replacement shuttle buses will operate between Roosevelt Island and Queens Plaza, as shown on this map, as we typically do on the week. And of course, there are other changes for other projects as we continue to put CBTC on the F line in Brooklyn, 8th Avenue CBTC for the E, Queens Boulevard is working CBTC as well. Plus we have some track work on 6th Avenue. So there will be other weekend and overnight outages during this time, but the weekday service should run pretty much as we've said here. As with any project this large, we'll implement extensive community outreach, including tonight, including online resources, signs and announcements around the subway system, as well as extra staff and broader community and press outreach. And with that, we'll open it up to questions, and I'll turn it back to Lucille.
Okay, well,
I wanted to just add one thing. I know that this is a lot of information to digest. And so, we recognize that this outage pretty much spans 3 boroughs, both for Manhattan, Queens, and there are some impacts for Brooklyn as well. So, we know that tonight folks are mostly concerned about Roosevelt Island impacts, but please also understand that, the work that we're doing impacts 3 boroughs and multiple lines. So just wanting to put that there as context. And we're happy to take questions.
okay. First, from the public, are there any people who'd like to ask questions? If there are, just go to your reactions button and, as Will said, and press the raise hand.
You have 3 hands up right now for Leah Hanlon, then a person named Nina, and then Alan and Joan.
Okay. So let's have Leah Hanlon first.
Go ahead. Look for a prompt on your screen to confirm unmuting whenever we call your name.
Yes, hi, thank you. Thanks for the presentation. It was quite a lot to absorb all at once. Whenever I'm on crutches, take the Q train to the F train to switch to the E train to get to Jamaica, to get to the Long Island Railroad, because Penn Station is not fully accessible. So if I were on crutches and needing to, prior to the new Grand Central train, which I haven't gotten to take yet, but how would somebody get from the Upper East Side to the train station at Jamaica, either for the Long Island or to get to the train to the plane or something in an accessible way?
So you're asking specifically, how would folks get to either an E train or to
I didn't follow the entire routing, but that's how I get to Long Island when I'm on crutches. I take the F train. So are all of the workarounds that you proposed equally accessible?
Back to this map. So we do have options here. So from the Upper East Side, the Q train is operating. If we do not have F service, 34th Street Herald Square is an accessible station where you can take the F train and transfer along that route to the E at one of these stations to get out to Jamaica.
Okay, so you'd have to take the Q down to Herald Square to do that.
That's probably the best way. There are some other
I
options as
have
well.
never actually managed to make that transfer in an accessible way at Herald Square, but I'm sure there must be some elevator tucked away that I don't know about, so I can look that up.
Okay, thank you. Who's next, Will?
Nina, and Nina, if you don't mind identifying yourself.
Right. Give us your last name, Nina.
My name is Nina Lublin. I'm a Roosevelt Island resident for 40 years. So I've lived here before the subway opened and since. And there are so many things wrong with what's going to happen to us here on the island with this shutdown, and comparing it to dental work, even if it's a joke, is not funny to any of us. The two big things I think for us here on the island is better access to and from Manhattan, and not the tram is already overtaxed and overused and cannot take any more capacity. A shuttle bus to Queens Plaza without folks absolutely knowing that there are how to get to the options for other buses to and from Manhattan is a very big deal and is not well explained. And finally, I don't know how to say this. I don't know who else is on the call right now from Roosevelt Island. I know there's somebody from Cornell watching. And I think for us, I don't feel like we're making a big demand here that the MTA provide more than what they're currently offering. People need access to Manhattan. They need a one-trip experience, particularly if they're elderly, if they're disabled, if they're traveling with children or who are stroller users. I just feel very strongly, and the MTA should not put all its eggs in the basket of the Roosevelt Island Operating Corporation, who really are responsible or have been responsible in the past, not as much in the recent past, for providing Manhattan, round trip service from Roosevelt Island to Manhattan, mostly when the tram is down, not necessarily when the subway is down. So May will be here before we know it. I sure hope the MTA really looks a little closer Roosevelt Island and helping us. The 4th of July is not the only big event that happens between May and October. And please show us some consideration and thoughtfulness as you go through this process. And I'm being very polite. And to my neighbor, Paul Crickler, thank you, and be our best advocate. Don't take no for an answer. Thank you. I'm done.
He doesn't usually take no for an answer.
So I just want to respond to some of Nina's concerns. So, typically when we do have shuttles going from Roosevelt Island, they are routed to Queens Plaza because it is a more direct route to ADA accessible station. Going into, and that was one of the questions that actually, when we briefed REOC on this, they asked us to analyze if we could have a more direct bus shuttle to Manhattan from the island. We're still analyzing that, but just on sort of the cursory look at that analysis, it actually would take longer for Roosevelt Island residents. It would take longer to be on a shuttle to go from the island directly to Manhattan. The Roosevelt Island Queens Plaza is the most direct way. And again, it connects folks to an ADA accessible station. Secondly, I would say that, whenever we're doing any major kind of shuttling project, we do have on-site staff that, for the first week or so, really help to direct folks to where they need to go. So in the slide that we showed that talked about sort of all the outreach that we'll have sort of leading up to this point. You know, that's one of the reasons why we're coming to you all March 1st. We're not coming to you, you know, at the end of April saying this is happening. We really are trying to be thoughtful about how we deploy our best resources to making sure that folks have an understanding of what's going on and specifically know exactly where they need to go for their commute. We're going to continue to work with REOC to make sure that there is enough, you know, access to the tram, and working with other folks like Cornell Tech and other folks to have an understanding of what's happening on the island in terms of major events. We know Cornell Tech has their graduation and there are other events that do happen on the island. So we are keeping in close contact with the correct folks for that. But we appreciate your comment. Thank you.
Lucille, if I can just add a couple of things. We were working on this today. Basically, because of the roundabout route to Manhattan, we anticipated taking at least or adding at least 10 minutes to Manhattan-bound customers' commute to have a full bus to 60th Street as opposed to the bus to Queens Plaza and then operating to a subway line. And I just also want to stress that the two-way outages are only for 6 weekends at the most, not during the week.
I think there are some people from Roosevelt Island who disagree. I see Nina is protesting, but we'll get, if she doesn't, we'll get back to her if others haven't raised the same issue here. Nina, I see you want to. Nina, why don't we unmute Nina so she can address this? She's been obviously
Go ahead, Nina.
here for a while. Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead, Nina.
Thank you. I just want to say one thing to, I'm sorry, Lucille, I can't see your last name on my screen. The thing about Queens Plaza that I think is most perplexing is not everybody needs a transfer to the subway. And the current construction situation in Queens Plaza for however the shuttle bus from Roosevelt Island to Roosevelt Island goes, there has to be some kind of better signage and information to people about how they can transfer safely to buses, particularly the four buses, the 3 or 4 buses that go to Manhattan, whose bus stop has been moved and, you know, and stuff like that. So I'm just saying, people need better information all the time. And we thank you for whatever you can do, and good luck with REOC.
And we'll get to this issue when we get to committee discussion. There may be things that we want to put in a resolution, but I'll leave that to the committee as we go forward here. Next, who is next? Is Alan Giamelli next?
Yeah, Alan, and then Joan will be after that.
Okay, good. Alan, why don't we unmute Alan here? Go ahead, Alan.
Hi, Russ. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. You know, I appreciate you guys trying to repair the subway for everyone. I know it's a long process. You know, I've been a long-time resident here, and I've traveled, you know, with the MTA even through the pandemic to get to work in Manhattan. I got a couple questions regarding phase 1 and 3. So I know on the map, primarily, you know, I travel a lot between Roosevelt Island and Rockefeller. So based off phase 1, I see there's no train to Queens. So because we have a lot of people that come from Rockefeller to the island, would you have to take the F 1, 2, 3, 4 stops to Queens Plaza, transfer, and then go 2 more stops on the F line back to Queens? Or sorry.
So this is one of the reasons why we
Go back to Manhattan.
we made the M train the one-way service here. So from Rockefeller Center, you can take an F train or an M train. The M train you can take to Steinway Street and then transfer directions to go back to Queensbridge, Roosevelt Island, or Manhattan. Or you can, if you were on an F train, you could go to Roosevelt Avenue and transfer there to an M train to go back to Roosevelt Island.
All right, so I see like going to Manhattan, the same routine as normal, but when you want to go from Manhattan back to the island, you're going to go from Rockefeller to Queens Plaza, transfer at Queens Plaza, and go back to Manhattan.
You should transfer
Is that
at
the plan?
Steinway Street or Roosevelt Avenue. Queens Plaza will not have service. Our tracks don't connect there to Roosevelt Island. So you should transfer at Steinway or at Roosevelt Avenue.
So is that 6 stops to Steinway from Rockefeller?
Count, I believe. I believe it's 5 or 6.
And then once you get to Steinway, you're going 1, 2, 3 back to Island. 3 back to Roosevelt Island.
Roosevelt Island would be the 3rd stop.
Okay, so all in all, it's 6. It's 9 more stops versus the 3 from before.
Yes.
Okay, and then in phase 3, because phase 2, Roosevelt Island will have the R in both directions. So then in phase 3, the M, there's no train to Manhattan. So then do you have to do the same 3?
Yeah, it would be the same in reverse. You go to Steinway and then back.
3 to Steinway, and then 6 to Manhattan to Rockefeller.
Yes.
Okay. Is there any concern of like, that's a lot more stops, and you know, for a lot of people trying to get to work, especially when you're going to have reduced trains during rush hour, like these are going to be really long times. And I'm also concerned about, like, Roosevelt Island is a very touristy place. So there's a lot of businesses that rely on, you know, people coming to the island, especially on weekends. This might deter a lot of people from coming as well. Because to the point of the tram, you know, there's no tap on for the tram at all. The trams are extremely full as well. So, you know, I agree that the shuttle bus isn't the best solution. It would take longer from a shuttle bus to get from Roosevelt Island to Manhattan, but you're making it even longer for people to get home now, or even to get to work. Like, it's becoming more of a problem just to get to the island.
So I would say that it's one of the reasons why when we do these type of track outages, you know, with the exception of those 6 weekends where it's a total outage, we do try to maintain service going at least in one direction. And part of this is really going to be giving folks enough time to plan what their new commute will be for this period of time. And also for folks to allow themselves more time to travel. So I would say anywhere between an additional 10 to 20 minutes, folks should be, you know, planning ahead so that, you know, especially for the first, you know, week or so when folks are getting acclimated, just to making sure that, you know, you get to where you need to go on time. But, you know, part of our sort of commitment to customers is that, you know, we really try not to take both tracks out of service at the same time. We do try to maintain some access for back riding so that folks can still get to their station. So, but we also do recognize your concerns, and thank you for your comment.
Okay, thank you. Next is Joan Markey. Can we unmute Joan?
Joan, go ahead and look for the prompt on your screen there you go. Joan, if you're speaking, we cannot hear you. Check to make sure your headset or whatever is not muted. Joan, we continue to not be able to hear you. Maybe try leaving and coming back and raise your hand again. But I think we need to move on.
Yeah. Susie Del Campo is next, I believe. Can we unmute
Susie, go ahead.
Hello,
Yes. we
how are
hear
you?
Fine. We
Okay.
hear you.
Great. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for doing this. And I live in Roosevelt Island. I'm a mom, and I think that the MTA has not even evaluated the situation of Roosevelt Island. In Roosevelt Island, there is no middle school and there is no high school. So I see your proposed service outages for the calendar year where the kids go to school. So you are not adding 10 minutes to their usual time to get to school or to come back from school. You are adding almost 45 minutes to it. The kids have a time to enter the schools, not that you get to work and like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm late. Like there are consequences for that. There could be consequences for middle school that they cannot enter a good high school because they are continuously late, or they present like a lot of lateness in the first 2 months of school, or they could be back an hour later. So you don't even realize that kids in Roosevelt Island need to go out to Manhattan. They don't go to Queens. The schools, the middle schools, are only in Manhattan where they are allowed to go. So I'm looking at your plan and I'm wondering how our middle schoolers and high schoolers are going to be able to be on time for their finals with the changes, because going all the way to Queens Plaza or to Roosevelt Avenue to take another train, it adds up a lot of time. Also, the school buses for some of the kids of Roosevelt Island pick them up right outside of the tram. So if the tram is going to be packed with people that needs to go to work and parents with children that need to go to school, then they will be late for sure. Then thinking about middle schoolers alone in Roosevelt Avenue just to get to school, it's catastrophic. It's extremely dangerous, that station, and very confusing for 12 years old, 11 years old, and 13 years old that they need to go to school. Then the tram, we cannot count with Roosevelt Island Operating Corporation for the tram because it's usually packed weekends and weekdays. When there's a holiday in any country of the world, it's packed with tourists. So we have to take a lot of time to do so. And I agree with Miss Nina, that we need to get a shuttle bus from the island directly to Manhattan. Like you can like put it like close by the tram. It doesn't matter. The kids know their way from the tram to the yellow line or to the green line that are like separated 1 block each from each other. The tram, the next block is on the yellow line, then it's the green line, to be able to get to school. That's imperative. That is imperative. We are not considering the children, and we're not talking about 10 children. We're talking about a population of middle schoolers, maybe 500, and another 500 will be for high schoolers. So just thinking they will be able to be late for their finals because of the closure of the tracks between May and June. And then when the school year starts, there's no service to Manhattan on weekdays, that they will also have to take an extra hour. It's catastrophic for our children. And not even counting when we have to go to our pediatricians that are in Manhattan for something that it's urgent, that they get sick in the middle of the night and next morning you have to go to a pediatrician. We should not be adding 1 hour just to wait for a shuttle bus or just to get to Roosevelt Avenue and pray that the elevator is working or anything. Also, usually the F trains in the morning around 8:30 and 9 o'clock in the morning come already packed from Queens. So even though if you're sending us to Roosevelt Avenue, the trains are already going to be packed. So if they're already going to be packed, you have to add time to be able to get into a train that it's not packed from Roosevelt Avenue. So it's not only the distance that you measure from Roosevelt Avenue to Manhattan, is like to get to Roosevelt Avenue, to get on the stairs, to find the platform, to wait in line, to be able to wait, like that time is not being considered. So we really need that the MTA for Roosevelt Island if you want only for students that need to study in Manhattan, because that's the directive of the District 2 of the DOE, to consider one shuttle bus to take the kids from Roosevelt Island to Manhattan, just to avoid delays for them to get into school and to keep them safe. We're not talking about teenagers that are 17 years old or 16. We're talking about kids that will be 11 years old and 12 years old. So that's my only comments. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Susie.
Thank you for your comment.
At this point, I'd like to call on Paul Crickler, who is a member of our committee, but also he's here. This is a joint hearing with the Roosevelt Island Committee. He's here also representing the Roosevelt Island Committee for any comments and questions or thoughts that he might have at this point. Then we'll continue on with some of the public folks who
Thank
still
you, Chuck.
want to speak.
And thank you both, Lucille and to Joshua, for the presentation. As you can see from the comments from people who live on Roosevelt Island, as I do, there's no way of avoiding saying this. It's going to be hugely disruptive to people who live here for the next many months. And I think we have to accept and understand that. You have to have the maintenance done. I understand that as well. But it will be hugely disruptive. And there's some things that can be done, I hope, around the edges that can make the disruption less awful. I'm not going to say better. I've got one request and then one question for you. But I also think that other people are going to speak after this who care more about some of the other issues like shuttle buses. But my comments as follows. First is a request. This may sound unrelated, but it's about Omni. I know it's not your area of expertise necessarily, but I would ask if MTA could please talk to RIOC to get Omni installed at the tram this month or next. It's supposed to be sometime second half, unconfirmed. The reason I'm making a deal of this is that it's going to be terrible when the F train shuts down. I think something like 80 or 90% of Roosevelt Island people use the subway versus the tram. So right now, already at the tram, we have long lines of people who stand at the MetroCard machines when they work. It's even worse when they don't work because they have to buy little MetroCards to get on the tram. And we have 10, 15, 20, 30-minute waits for people right now while the subway's still running. Imagine what happens, April, May, June, July onwards, when most or all of the F trains is screwed up for them. We're going to have multiples more people there. They try and use the Omni and they can't because it doesn't work there, because it doesn't exist there. So just to make something that's horrible become a little bit less horrible, I implore you, please, can you talk to colleagues elsewhere in the MTA, to talk to RIOC, between the two of you, sort out how to get this put in now. It should not be beyond the realm of human endeavor to get Omni put at Roosevelt Island tram. That's my request. My question is, I'm afraid I'm not quite as quick as some people on this call. I don't really understand fully what's happening to Roosevelt Island in terms of which trains are coming and not. And pardon me, because I found some of you're getting lots of information onto these slides. It's hard to see it from the point of view of a person living on the island. I think I understand for phase 2 that if I look at the MTA map, you're going to push the R train from 57th Street and 7th Avenue, not to go, normally would go, but to go up where the Q train would go and go across Roosevelt Island that way. I think I get that. And I think you said that's even more important on July 4. I don't really understand what happens to trains in phase 1 and phase 3. And I hope you could answer really slowly, please. I have a hard time keeping up. A lot of people have asked me this question over the past few days. So I'm not just speaking for myself. Many people genuinely don't know what's happening. I think people understand, for example, in phase 1, if you think about going Queensbound, there's no service. But I don't really understand what happens to trains going the other way. What actually stops at Roosevelt Island and what doesn't? So could you please answer those ones slowly for me? Thank you.
So when it runs, the M train will be stopping at Roosevelt Island in the direction that we are able to run. This is partly so that riders can back right from Steinway and don't have to go all the way out to Roosevelt Avenue.
Can I stop you a second? Can I stop you a second? Yes. So Queensbound, I think I understand, yes. In phase 1, there is no service. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Correct. My next question, I'm sorry to ask the question this way, but this is the way I'm understanding it.
Okay.
If I'm standing on the platform of Roosevelt Island subway station, what am I expecting to arrive going Manhattan bound on a weekday?
An M train.
And that M train will go and then end up where? I'm just trying to look at the subway map.
Well, it goes down 6th Avenue. It runs in Manhattan, same as the F train.
Great. Okay, got it.
And then it goes down You know, then it goes down to Second Avenue and out to Brooklyn,
Gotcha. No, that's okay.
Middle Village instead of Coney Island. But
That's okay. I'm all I'm trying to work is where it connects to where it's supposed to connect to. So how about on nights and weekends on phase one?
And just before we move on, I just wanted to add also the M trains do run local on Queens Boulevard out in Queens. They are traditionally less crowded than the F trains since they're running local and not express. So that's another reason why we're doing this.
Okay, I'm trying to focus for the many people here on this call who live on Roosevelt Island, who are struggling to understand what actually is happening at their subway station. So if I go back to what I was asking, please.
Yes.
Manhattan bound on weekdays, you've told me the M train stops there. What happens on nights and weekends?
So nights and weekends, there is no M train in Manhattan, so it's the F train operating towards Manhattan.
Thank you. And am I correct on phase two? It's basically the R train touches down here and that's it.
That is correct.
Thank you. Thank you. Next question. Phase three, I think I understand the Manhattan bound no service. Is it just the opposite of phase one, the other direction?
That is correct.
Thank you. Those are my questions answered. Thank you very much for indulging me in that one. I'm sorry I labored that one, but a lot of people had a real hard time understanding this. I implore you to listen to the people who have a hard time getting around. It sounds easy for us to talk about taking a backtrack this and a backtrack there, but especially people with difficulty getting around, this can be hugely disruptive. So they may need more bus service than you're thinking. Thank you, Chuck. I'll leave it there.
I just wanted to add one thing because you mentioned phase two where it's the R trains. At late nights, it is the E train instead of the R train. So phase two, it's basically the R train, but on the overnights, it's the E.
Got it. Thank you.
And if I could just interject, hello. Since I was on the call with that was held for the elected officials and community districts a few weeks ago, I had actually made comments similar to what Paul just made regarding Omni. And I wanted to just ask in a public forum if there has been any movement, any progress in discussions in terms of a memorandum of understanding that REAC would be able to enter into with the MTA in order to allow the Omni integration to be accelerated so it could be in place by the time that this project begins in earnest on May 1st, because as you know, MTA, New York City Transit, has really been pushing Omni and trying to convert as many people over as possible. And in the case of this project, it's going to force many users who have converted to Omni to have to use a MetroCard again, or be forced to use or to pay a second fare if they wish to use the Roosevelt Island tram. So my question is, has there been any movement? And if not, what can we do as a community board to help try to initiate this project and get it moving quickly? Because that would be a major benefit to Roosevelt Islanders who are going to be inconvenienced by this project. If they had at least the ability to not have to fight MetroCard machines and not have to revert back to MetroCard, and to be able to get a free transfer between the tram and the New York City subway system using Omni.
So we have continued being in discussion with REAC. I don't have anything to share in terms of an update on that this evening, but we will circle back to you once we have something to share.
Can I just add one more thing? One more thing, please. I'm sorry, Chuck, to jump in again. I forgot to mention this. While you're talking to REAC, please, I can imagine there are probably a couple of thousand people living on Roosevelt Island thinking, I know what's going to happen. On one of the bad weeks, we're going to lose one of the trams for maintenance or something. And we've had this before when we've had no subway service and one tram, and it's beyond chaos. They have to call the police out, and the lines. It's ridiculous. So please, when you're talking to REAC, please make sure they don't do regular planned maintenance during this next few months. That would be awful.
Well, Craig and Paul, we'll have to reflect that in any kind of a resolution, I think, that we get before the committee tonight and the board in our full board meeting. Okay, let's go back to the public. I believe the next person is Jenny Liu. Is that, can we unmute Jenny? Go ahead. I think you're, I think you're unmuted now.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great, awesome. First of all, I wanted to thank you for this presentation. It was pretty informative. And I really do appreciate the intentions behind repairing the tracks. So for some context, I'm a Cornell Tech student. I live on Roosevelt Island. I have a lot of friends who also live here as well, and we're all graduate students here. And I think there were a few points that I wanted to make on behalf of some of my classmates as well, who have also asked me to share some of these. I think the biggest thing that people were mentioning are just the greater economic effects that this project is going to create. And we wanted to know if there were any kinds of thought going on in terms of compensating for those negative economic effects. And I think some people already touched upon that. First of all, I think a lot of my friends are reconsidering whether they want to even stay on the island next year, potentially moving off the island, or, like even breaking their lease potentially because of this. Just the inconvenience of having to go into the city for work and everything else is just really difficult for them. So we wanted to know if there was any thought behind that. Additionally, with the subway running less, I think Uber and Lyft prices, like ride sharing prices, are also going to be going up. So in cases of emergencies where people need to leave the island, such as when they need to go to the ER, or if they need to take their pet, for example, to the ER, has there been any consideration regarding those impacts as well? And additionally, I was thinking about like the tram capacity problem as well, especially during the summertime when that really reaches its peak. And we in my mind, I was thinking if there could be a way to implement some sort of reservation system for the tram to make that process a little bit more streamlined, and also create a separate queue for tourists versus residents, because I think that that's really been a tension point between the two groups when it comes to using the tram. So I think that maybe those could be potential things to consider. But really altogether, it's just considering these economic impacts and whether or not there's any steps that can be realistically taken to mitigate some of that. And I kind of wanted to touch upon the lease breaking idea again. Some friends are actually considering that. And I was just wondering if that's something that can, if there could be like a special clause for that or anything that could be done.
So I can't speak to people's decisions about where they choose to sign a lease or sort of involvement with landlord tenant issues. I would say in terms of economic impact, we certainly, it's part of the reason why we are really trying to engage folks early so that folks can prepare. We are a public authority, so MTA is not a private corporation. So any and all of the monies that we have are public funds. And so, there is a separate, claims and legal process for if folks want to apply for financial compensation from the MTA. That's nothing that our team sort of handles. That would be with MTA legal. And I'm happy to share that information with folks, but just understand that that is a very different conversation than what we're having this evening. But again, I appreciate you bringing up these issues, sort of, representing the student population, and we'll take them back. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I believe next is Melissa Wade. Can we unmute Melissa? Okay, Melissa, you should be able to, you're unmuted.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So just a couple of things. I've been here for 13 years. So when you talk about you just take the subway into Queens and turn around at Roosevelt Avenue, as was mentioned by other people, that is not easy, nor is it quick. So I appreciate that you're going to have the turn at Steinway for whenever that's going to be happening. So I just want to say thank you for that. And also note that, so not only are we losing trains, but then you said we're having even less service on the lines that are running. So when someone does have to go out to Roosevelt Avenue, and this has happened to me several times when you guys were working on the Q train and pushing that through, and we had no subway whatsoever, or we had, in one direction for years, you'll get out there and you'll see the F train and they don't wait for you. So now instead of 30 minutes out and back, it's like 40 minutes. And so I think if you could help your conductors be really conscientious of the fact that there are people who have gone all the way out there who are trying to just turn around and get back, that they could be cognizant of that and when the trains are talking to each other and do some sort of organizing the schedule around the out and back. Again, especially if they're running fewer trains. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I think, we can certainly, and again, this goes hand in hand with having on-site staff at all of these locations, helping people to transfer, helping folks sort of, get acclimated to the change. So,
I mean, we know how to do the transfer. Like I said, I did it for years, but it is really frustrating when you get off the train, have to run up the stairs across the way, and you're running down and they just take off. When that train knows that the one that came in has people on it, they're going to be trying to go to the other direction. So no staff member can help that unless they're going to hold the train, which that would be great. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, next I believe is Matt Waldman. And when you
Hi,
Matt,
are you
go
able
ahead.
to hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I wanted to first thank you for the presentation. Really great to see everything on the maps cleared out. And first wanted to clarify the shuttle bus that you were talking about before. It appears that the shuttle bus is only being offered when there's completely no service in both directions on Roosevelt Island. So anytime that there's service running in one direction, there's no shuttle bus. So I think that needs to be cleared up because it seems like it would be helpful to have shuttle bus during those times when you're only having one line of train running in one direction. So just wanted to, just to clarify that there is no shuttle bus phase 1, 2, and 3, that's not included on the maps. And going on with that, the Q102 bus on Roosevelt Island is the one city MTA bus that Roosevelt Island residents have access to. Currently, that runs every 40 minutes. So if you're not having train service, very limited train service, having to take multiple trains to get off of Roosevelt Island to Manhattan, and then you have a bus that runs every 40 minutes that you cannot rely on if there's no train service, limited train service, over capacity service, you cannot access the Roosevelt Island tram or take the NYC ferry that also runs every 40 minutes. It's just not acceptable to take all these different modes of transportation that you cannot rely on. Also wanted to bring up the Roosevelt Island escalators. It hasn't been discussed, but I noticed last few months, a lot of the escalators are regularly out of service. I think it was just yesterday that both of the up escalators were completely out of service, and then right now you're repairing one of those escalators. But to have people who are disabled with strollers, carriages, going up it's nearly 8 stories to get from the bottom of the platform up to the street level, and that's just not acceptable. That on top of all of these other changes that you have planned. And then also wanted to see, you have one train running in one direction. What happens if there's a medical emergency or something with the train needs to, if there's a breakdown or something that disrupts service on that one line? Now you're having all of these residents on the island stranded, nowhere to go. Can't get on the tram. You have to. There's no way to leave here. You're really just stranded. And then lastly, have you accounted for any delays in the project that could potentially extend this past October, and what those disruptions look like for Roosevelt Island?
So I appreciate your litany of questions. I would say in terms of project overrun, we have done this direct fixation track rehabilitation work on both the J and the E line, the JZ line and the E line. And if anything, we finished early. I can't necessarily speak for this particular project, but We are really committed to staying on time and on budget with this project and not overseeding what we have laid out.
Okay, next to Joan, I see we have Joan's iPad. If you could if you could unmute Joan, and please identify yourself, Joan.
I'm Joan Markey. I tried to talk before and switch devices and hope I can do so.
Oh,
now.
yes, you're on now. You're on now. Good. Okay, great.
My apologies if anyone else has already made these points. In connection with the Omni problem, the Omni machines in the subway station will not be accessible when that station is closed. And that means there's only 2 machines on Roosevelt Island where you can buy a Metro card, and you need a Metro card if you're going to take the tram or if you want to get a free transfer to the tram. For a period of about 6 weeks, a few months ago, both the machines on the island side of the tram were out and not functioning. So the only way to buy a Metro card on the island was to walk to the subway station and then walk back to the tram with your card filled. So I would ask that at the very least, that if you're not going to fix this Omni problem, and we have to go through what sounds like a total nightmare, that you at least get more of the dispensing machines available on Roosevelt Island, as well as the tram side, because there's going to be an awful lot of people who would normally be using Omni who are now going to want to take the tram, and they're going to have to buy Metro cards or pay double fare. So I think that's one problem would help. Secondly, I agree with the person who brought up the Q bus, as well as the ferry. During this outage, could you at least arrange to have a free transfer between the ferry and the tram and the subway, so that we won't have everybody trying to take the tram? Because I've lived on the island since 1977, and it takes a lot more time to go to Queens and turn around than this presentation suggests. At one point, I remember vividly, 41 years ago, I was expecting a child and I had to walk up those stairs. I almost had to quit work early, not because I couldn't work, but because I couldn't deal with the stairs that I had to deal with at the subway in order to get to work in the morning. So if we could take some of the pressure, if you have to do this, please run that bus, the Queens bus, more than once every 40 minutes. And please arrange so that people who are going to the Upper East Side could take the ferry and not have to pay an extra $5.50 or whatever it is now to go via the ferry for a portion of their trip. It seems to me that that's something that could be done. I'm a senior citizen now, and I don't commute regularly, but I feel like I'm going to be trapped on Roosevelt Island. I love the theater, and I go to the theater frequently. I travel by subway most of the time. Sometimes I travel by tram. And frankly, I am not comfortable trying to make the switch at Queensboro Plaza. If I miss a bus, I'm standing down there. And as a senior citizen, or lots of the people from the island are disabled, we're sitting ducks. And with the construction situation, I don't know what it will be, but it's not a safe transfer. We really need direct. I appreciate the need to have people be able to access the when they're disabled, but we really need a direct bus from Roosevelt Island to Manhattan, because that's where most of us have our lives. We are different than the other stations because we can't walk to alternative stations. We can't grab a taxi and say, take me 10 blocks and get me to a different train station. That's not an option here. Anyway, I hope that I don't want this to happen, especially the weekend outages with no service anywhere and having to take the bus. I mean, that basically means I'm trapped on the island, and I'm not the only one. So anyway, Thanks for listening to me, but if you could at least try to add more alternative transportation and deal with the problem of needing to buy Metro cards, that might help some. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We've heard from everyone at least once, and I'd like to go to the board now, so we've been at this a little over an hour, and see what, if there are any comments from the board or anyone would like to offer any kind of a resolution here. And I don't know, Paul, if you want to, I'll lead with you first. If you want to do anything.
I'd like to hear what
them.
Sharon has to say. Thank you, Chuck. I see
Oh.
Sharon has a hand up. I'd love to
Oh,
hear-
sure. Yes, as a Roosevelt Island resident, sure. Let's hear what Sharon has to say. Sharon Poe Marshall, let's unmute Sharon. She's unmuted. Go ahead, Sharon.
Thank you, Chuck. Thank you, Paul. First of all, I'd like to welcome Lucille back to Community Board 8. It's fantastic to see you. And taking the Roosevelt Island tram, and perhaps I should begin by saying, seeing the Roosevelt Island tram being built and taking the Roosevelt Island tram really forces you to think about transportation outside of the box. I love taking public transportation, and it could be the bus, the subway, as well as the tram. I was here listening to the presentation, and thank you so much for first acknowledging, Lucille, how confusing that presentation was, because I really did not understand it as much as I really genuinely wanted to. And I think that there might, be some, there might need to be some tweaking of the presentation itself to make it something that people can wrap their heads around a little bit better. But it seemed to me overall that the recommendation for alternative routes was the most convoluted that I have heard, period. As a Roosevelt Island resident since 1976, I have had the pleasure, if you will, of taking and going through a multitude of routes to and from Roosevelt Island, when there was a subway, when there wasn't a subway, when there was a tram, when there wasn't a tram, when the subway is out of order, when the subway was, when there was work being done on the tracks at various points over the years. I've done it, and I have to be honest with you. I did it with I did it with the strength of a New Yorker, and I plowed through it. Usually the transfers happened around 47th, 50th Street. Once in a while, the transfers happened around West 4th Street. Not very often do you have to go into Queens Plaza. I have to be honest with you, Lucille. There are some safety issues there. I do have some concerns. I would much prefer a direct route from Roosevelt Island into Manhattan. And by the way, I'll take the extra 10 minutes. I'll take the extra 10 minutes to avoid the convoluted route that is being planned for this community. And by the way, I'll take the extra 15 minutes. If I could get from Roosevelt Island directly, let's say by bus into Manhattan, I don't care if it takes longer. It's a safer option. It is easier for people that are mobility challenged. And certainly it is a direct route. I regret that I do not see this plan as a plan that the committee itself should accept. And so I'm hoping, Paul, that I'm hoping, Paul, that you would recommend that we not accept this plan. And also, I think we have to have a separate resolution, and I leave that completely up to you, Paul, reiterating our desire to have Omni in place before any change takes place in the transportation system to Roosevelt Island. And in regards to those changes, I love the idea of a free transfer to the ferry. I think that that's certainly doable. It would relieve some of the pressure off of the tram, because ultimately, let's acknowledge the obvious. 99.9% of us are going into Manhattan. We're not going into the opposite section. So thank you very much for taking the time to meet with us, and welcome again, Lucille, back to Community Board 8. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Sharon. Can I just ask a follow-up question, though, in regards to some of your comments and some of the things that we heard from other speakers? So in regards to Queens Plaza, can someone from New York City Transit explain what it would entail for someone who requires elevators or has accessibility needs to be able to make the transfers? And furthermore, is Steinway Street accessible? I'm under the impression that it's not. How do people make the transfer at Steinway Street? Is it an underground tunnel there? Just want to understand that as well as we're thinking about a resolution and trying to make sure that we're covering all our bases for all our constituents with different needs.
You're correct. Steinway Street is not accessible. That's why Roosevelt Avenue, Jackson Heights is listed as an alternative that is an accessible station, which has fully accessible connections.
All right, but that also is further away, and for someone who would need to go all the way to Roosevelt Avenue to backtrack, I'm estimating that at best it's 20 minutes additional travel time for someone from Roosevelt Island to take a train to Steinway to make the connection, and then the train time to get to 59th and Lex, and to be able to then continue along their route to wherever they're going. But it would be even longer if they had to go to Roosevelt Avenue, correct?
Well, it depends on what subway you're taking. If you're on the F, it's going express, so some of the time might be made up, but correct, Roosevelt Avenue is further than Steinway. So that's why we have the M going to Roosevelt Island, so that you have a shorter back ride.
Right, but I think this supports some of the requests being made for a shuttle bus option as well, to accommodate some passengers that may be much more inconvenienced by the backtracking that would be necessary on a daily basis. All right, that's all for now. I just wanted to.
Thanks, Greg. Let me turn over to Paul. Paul, I don't know if you want to offer a resolution here. We can talk about it.
I think that the 4 things I've written down so far that strike me as something we should ask for is a free ferry transfer, an additional shuttle bus option, Omni to be in place this month or next, i.e. before the work starts. And the one other one I'd like to add is, while talking to REOC, make sure they don't do any planned outages that can be avoided during that period. That would be
Also, the Q1 bus service to more frequent Q1 bus service.
Q102.
Is there a Q1 or 2? Is that there 2 of them?
It's the Q102. But
Oh, the 102, sorry.
Well, Paul, can I ask a question that may also help inform this? And that is the tram being operated at maximum capacity on a 24/7, not 24/7 basis, but most of the time, or
Yes.
do they reduce service during periods of time during weekdays? And would it be worth including here something calling on REAC to ensure that full service aside from not having any planned maintenance, but just full maximum service is in place during phases 1 and 3?
I think that's a fine idea to add, yes.
Yeah. And do you have the free transfer to the ferry, free ferry transfer?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, okay. Those are the notes that I had, yeah.
That's a great addition, Craig.
So we look forward to receiving your finished resolution so that we can respond to those queries.
The only thing I'd like to say right now is, we do a resolution, include the Omni thing, we get to the full board, and we've eaten up a good chunk of the period between now and when it starts. So in terms of getting the Omni machines put in, please.
Well, they're already, I mean, it seems to me for the MTA, you're not talking about a lot of them, and you've already put Omni in certain stations, and this could be it's a fairly simple thing to do if there's a will to do it. So we're hoping that.
The issue is because I've been working on this on a professional basis, not for here in New York City, but there is a memorandum of understanding that would be required between REAC and the MTA in order to get this done, and the MTA would have to provide that to REAC. So it's really, my understanding is that it's on the MTA to try to get those wheels in motion, which is why it's need to call that out.
So you mean
discussions have been underway, so
to be honest,
maybe we can spur them on.
We've had a petition that got 1,500 signatures. We had our council member ask. We've had a bunch of people ask. We know there've been discussions, but what I'm asking you, Lucille, is don't wait for our letter, please, because that'll be half the time gone between now and then. We know the discussion's going already. Please ask them just to, the request is please to alleviate some of the madness coming, so somebody can just get it done. Don't wait for our letter, please.
Yeah.
I'm not. I have down everybody's comments. I have down the suggestions that you're going to be putting into the resolution. So we already have a head start.
So thank you so much, Lucille.
Yes, appreciate that. Okay. Is there further discussion on the resolution among the board members?
I think, Mohit just texted me something. I don't know if he wants to speak to one or other potential addition, even though I'm not sure whether it is feasible, just knowing the issues with the MetroCard vending machines. But he was suggesting, based on the comments, that there should be more MetroCard vending machines available, or which I know the MTA doesn't necessarily have available at their disposal, but maybe we want to have some language in there just saying that we need the MTA to provide us assurances that MetroCard machines on Roosevelt Island are kept in working order.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Good addition. I like that.
Okay. Okay. Is there any other comment from board members? If not, are we ready to vote on the resolution? And we'll leave. Okay. I think we're ready to vote. Craig, why don't you want to call a roll first to see who's here?
Sure. If we could just lower the hands, please, Will. Okay. So the board members who are here currently are myself, Chuck, Paul, Judy, Lori, Michelle Mohit, Mrs. Brown, Peter, Rebecca Lamort, Rita, Sharon. If you are a board member and I missed you, please raise your hand.
Okay. Why don't we, for those who are in favor, you don't have to do anything, but if there's anyone who wants to vote no or abstain or not voting for cause, raise your hand so you can be recorded. Okay. I don't see anybody right off the bat. So that should pass unanimously. Now, well, our full board, when are we having this come up at the full board meeting? Then when is that? That's 2 weeks. Is that going to be 2 weeks? The 15th?
Yes.
Yeah. So this is the 15th. It'll come before the full board. If anyone has any, I know there were a couple people who still wanted to make comments, but you know, in the interest of time, unfortunately, we had to, you know, get it. If you have any comments or you think you want to add something, you know, send it to the board office or talk to Paul, who's a, you know, and we can make further changes at the board meeting if there's something, you know, someone that has an idea that hasn't been reflected here. But I think we have all of the ideas, and there were a lot of good ones, and the MTA said they'll be looking at these things, and so we'll hopefully can spur them on and make things a little less annoying and inconvenient.
Chuck,
As
I'll take the first stab at doing it. I'll send it to you and Craig tomorrow, okay?
That's fine. Thanks. Thank you. So I thank everybody for that. The next, we're not through with the MTA and New York City Transit. There's an update on the 68th Street station accessibility upgrades.
Yes, so hi again. Josh, thank you so much for the presentation. I released you for the evening. And so we are joined tonight by members of our project team for 68th Street. Will Joseph O'Donnell from MTA is going to be giving the presentation. So if he can be allowed to share screen and also be unmuted, that would be awesome.
Absolutely. Great to see Joe again.
Yes. And just to give some context, this project originally started back in August. And so, you know, tonight we are going to be giving a progress update on where the project is, and then we will continue to come back to the board as we move closer to completion with updates. So we're looking forward to giving folks a taste of what we've been doing and to answer any and all constituent questions. And I know that there are a lot of Imperial House stakeholders and shareholders here. And so we look forward to answering questions.
Go ahead, Joe. If you, oh, he's unmuted, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. And good to see a lot of familiar faces here. Thank you, Lucille, for the introduction. And thank you, Community Board 8, obviously, for having us. So as Lucille mentioned, we're here today to talk to you about 68th Street Hunter College ADA Accessibility Project. For those of you who are not familiar with me, my name is Joe O'Donnell, and I am the Director of Government and Community Affairs for MTA Construction and Development. We are the arm of the MTA that is actually delivering the project. As Lucille mentioned, also joined by some of the project team here this evening. So as we go through the presentation, I would ask you all to just hold your questions to the end so that maybe we can get to some of those questions throughout the course of our presentation. And then if not, we have our subject matter experts from the project team on hand, and we can go to them for any details that we may not address in the presentation. So with that, I'm going to share my screen. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay. So as I mentioned, we're here to talk to you about the ADA accessibility project for 68th Street Hunter College. The project is to install, well, the primary goal of the project is to install 3 new ADA elevators at this station. We will also be building 2 new entrances from street to platform, redesigning 2 existing entrances, and then a whole host of utility relocation, not only on 68th Street, 69th Street, but also on Lexington. We'll get into more of the finer details of each of these elements as we go through the presentation. This project started in December of 2021 and has a substantial completion date of December of 2024. As I mentioned, the overall scope of the project includes 3 ADA elevators. 2 of these elevators will go from the mezzanine to the platform. Those keeping score at home, those are numbered EL 284 and EL 285. There is 1 elevator from the street to the mezzanine, and that will be on the northeast corner of Lexington Avenue and 68th Street. That is EL 286. There are 2 new street entrances from the street to the platform level. There is a Lexington Avenue mid-block entrance that most of us on the call here associate, or the Zoom associate with Imperial House, and then the 69th Street entrance, which is stair 5. And again, we'll show some maps in a little bit to orient folks to the locations of these components. A major component of the overall construction, as I mentioned, is the street utility locations. They span the entire footprint of the station and the surrounding streets, and these utilities need to be relocated and upgraded in order to support the elevator installation. This makes up the bulk of the work that we're doing overnight. We are restricted to doing this work overnight because of the congested nature of this area of town and all of the traffic in the street on both 68th, 68th, 69th, and Lex that requires us to do this work in the off hours. There's also expansion of the mezzanine, which would be which is being extended to incorporate the new street to mezzanine elevator. That's that EL 286 that I referenced. And then there's additionally track work to support the ongoing construction of the elevators and bring the station to an overall state of good repair, SOGR in the vernacular, if you've heard the term before. In order to construct these 3 elevators, all of the major utility lines from DEP, Con Edison, and various communications networks needs to be relocated. At 68th Street, for instance, we're doing, or we had to do water service, gas, electric, steam, and sewage. At 69th, again, water service, electric lines. There's a new vent post and gas and ECS, which is your Verizon communications lines needed to be reconfigured. And then on Lexington Avenue, there's vent reconstruction on both sides of Lex. We're going to be installing ADA compliant sidewalks and also, again, needing to relocate the electric lines. For folks orienting folks to the current configurations, obviously you know full well the entrances for this station are congregated around 68th and Lexington on all 4 corners here. At Hunter College, the West Building, we have stairs 01 and 03, as well as on the eastbound side, the Hunter College East Building, we have stair 02 and 04, and then single stairs on the northern side of 68th and Lex, stair S3 on the northeast west side and stair S4 on the northeast side. Fast forward to the completion of the project and what the new configuration will look like. You'll still have stairs 01 and 03 on the southeast corner. There will be a reconfiguration of the existing stair to widen it at 02 and 04. There's going to be a reconstructed stair on the northwest corner at S3. And the northeast corner of 68th and Lexington, we're going to have a reconfigured stair S4, as well as the installation of that EL or elevator 286 from the street level down to the mezzanine level. And then on 69th Street, we have on the southwest corner of 69th and Lex, stair S5, which is a new stair. And then that mid-block or the Imperial House stair at S6, mid-block between 6-8 and 6-9 on the east side of Lexington Avenue. This is a rendering of what the finished product will look like on the northeast corner of 68th and Lex. You have the new stair S4 to the east of the elevator, and then the new elevator EL 286. Going down below, we take you down now to the existing conditions at the mezzanine level. We already talked about stairs 01, 03, 02, and 04 at the street level. Those stairs now take you down to the intermediate mezzanine level, where you will then take stairs down to the platform level. Fast forward to the completion of this project and what the mezzanine conditions will look like afterwards. We now have a southbound elevator 284 on the northeast side, northwest side of 68th and Lexington Avenue. And that's out from the mezzanine to the platform. We also have those rehabilitated stairs at S3, which now bring you down to a P3 and an M3 reconstructed stair. It's not rocket science with the labeling or the nomenclature here. When you see an S associated with a number, that's a street. And then the number of stair, the M is for mezzanine, and then P would be down to the platform. Also on the south side, or the bottom portion of the screen here, you see the elevator 285, which is the new platform, mezzanine to platform elevator for the northbound service, as well as more to the southern half, but in the center of your screen, that elevator 286, which is going to take you from the street down to that main mezzanine, and then the reconfigured stair S4. The new entrances that we've talked about, we have the 69th Street stair, which is that S5 stair on 69th Street and Lex. So that's going to bring you down to the mezzanine, where you will then take a new mezzanine or M5 stair down to the platform. There will be new fair array turnstiles here, as well as an Imperial House, which is that mid-block entrance on Lexington Avenue on the east side. That is the S6 stair from the street to the mezzanine level. And then you have the mezzanine and platform stairs down to the northbound tracks. So there you will also have new fair arrays and turnstiles to enter into the station. Sorry. Existing conditions at the platform level. You see the southbound and northbound tracks. We are reconfiguring the normal EDR and reserve EDR rooms. What these are the electrical distribution rooms. These are the rooms that help us take the Con Edison power and transfer it to a power that's usable for the New York City transit system. And then not only do we have that electrical distribution room, but we have a redundant room in the event that there's ever a problem with that first, or what we call the normal EDR room. There's always the reserve EDR room as a backup. Fast forward to the end of the project, we have the reconstructed EDR room. We have a rehabilitated platform, stairs, and then new elevator 284 to the mezzanine on the north side of the screen. On the bottom half of the screen, we have elevator 285 from the mezzanine down to the platform level. We have the new stair inside the Imperial House space, which is that S6 stair. And then in the upper right-hand corner, we have that P5 stair, which comes down from the S5 and M5 stairs down to the platform. That's that new entrance on 69th Street. As part of this work, there will be improved ADA boarding areas at the center, or just about the center, of both the south and northbound platforms. So some of this, went too far there. Some of the milestones that we are tracking as part of this project, milestone 2, which actually happened before milestone 1. about milestone 2 S3, which was completed and open to the public. Milestone 1 is that Lexington Avenue mid-block stair, which is opening this month. As a matter of fact, we have some progress on that to show a little bit later in this deck. We have the stair or the vent reconstruction down Lexington Avenue. That work is in progress south of 68th Street. We anticipate wrapping that up Q1 of this year. We have the East Lexington sidewalk restoration. That work is anticipated to be completed in Q1 of this year, so essentially at the end of this month. And then some of the more forward-looking milestones, street utility relocation is anticipated to wrap up closer to the end of the year. We have about 60% of that work done now. That's that more noisier and troublesome work that we need to do overnight. The architectural work on the north and southbound platforms, that'll wrap up or targeted to wrap up in Q4 of 2023. Similarly, the track work and maintenance work, Q4 of 2023. Looking ahead to next year, we have state of good repair work inside the station. Mezzanine expansion work is expected to wrap up in Q1 of 2024. A lot of this work is underground with the exception of the mezzanine expansion work. Because of the nature of that work, there will be machinery and that work will have to be executed from the street level. So there will be, some noise producing activities associated with that mezzanine expansion work. But as you'll notice with these milestones, as we progress from today forward, and in fact, today with the completion of the Imperial House stair, there is some reduction in some of the noise producing work there. But as we progress throughout the course of 2023, we start to be less impactful at the surface level, and things continue to be focused more on subsurface work. Again, just want to be fully transparent and make sure that folks are aware that there will be some noise producing activities related to that mezzanine expansion work. And then we have the installation of the elevators 284, 285, and 286 at the end of 2024. Just to give you a sense of some progress shots, of work that's been ongoing. That's that stair S3 and M3 that we mentioned that was completed and open to the public on the northeast or west side of 68th and Lex. We have the new entrance, that mid-block entrance or the Imperial House entrance that folks are familiar with. That is now completed and available to the public. We have a lot of work that's currently in progress. Just to give you a sense of the magnitude of the work that is going on. This is some of the utility work that we mentioned needs to be done. You have various, as I alluded to earlier in the deck, various utility companies, and they're basically the arteries, going through the middle of the street here that we need to relocate in order to not only power the elevators, but to get them out of the way of the construction so that they are not negatively impacted. With this, I'm going to pause for a moment here and turn it over to Lucille to talk about some of the communications work that's been ongoing. I know we've had a few of my GCR counterparts, my government community relation counterparts. You've been familiar with Marcus Book over the years, and I know Ernest Monterelli had a stint here with CB8, but Lucille Songhai, who you know and love, as we all do, is back here, as some of the folks have already mentioned. So Lucille, turn it back over to you for a moment to talk a little bit about some of that communications efforts that we've been doing surrounding this work.
Thank you so much, Joe. So ongoing stakeholder communication, and again, this will be happening throughout the project duration. So we meet bi-weekly with Hunter College representatives to coordinate with them, since they also have their own current construction project at 68th Street and Lexington Avenue. We also hold bi-weekly meetings with the Imperial House General Manager, Frank Durant, to discuss issues and communicate work being done on the property in support of the ADA project. But also, even though we meet with him formally bi-weekly, we also speak with his staff pretty much daily to troubleshoot any individual complaints that we receive from shareholders. Additionally, we provide a biweekly 2-week look-ahead schedule that is distributed to Imperial House shareholders through the general manager. We also send that information to the local elected officials, and Manhattan Community Board 8 also receives that biweekly 2-week look ahead, which I sent yesterday for the next 2 weeks, or actually on Tuesday. Yeah, so I guess that was yesterday. So also we communicate with the surrounding residential buildings regarding any DEP test water shutdowns that we have to do. And then we also communicate and coordinate with all of the Lexington Avenue street level businesses, particularly those in the commercial space below Imperial House. We work very closely with them around our work impacts. So I think the biggest thing, the biggest complaint that we hear primarily from shareholders at Imperial House has to do with the noise. And as Joe talked about, we are constrained by our permits that we have to do work in the overnight hour, particularly around Lexington Avenue. Our folks are out there during the day, and so we are doing work during the day, but for sort of the major utility work, all of that has to be done in the overnight hours. Back in December, at the end of December, we shared with neighbors and with all stakeholders, including the community board, about all of our ongoing methods for night work noise mitigation and keeping within our permit compliance. We do have a third-party noise monitor that takes hourly readings of noise around the construction site. And that monitor values, they're reviewed daily by our project staff. And typically, if someone from Imperial House has questions about particular noise values, we will communicate with Frank to share the information about what the value of the noise monitor was for that particular period of time. And for the most part, I would say, 95% of the time, we really are keeping within our permit compliance. I do like to tell folks when I, hear from particular shareholders, you will hear noise. And so, even with us staying within permit compliance, that does not mean that you're not going to hear any noise at all. But our main goal is really keeping within our permit compliance. And so the ways that we have done that through the course of this project, we have purchased and have applied 20 additional acoustic barrier blankets that supplement our existing sound barriers. We have really tried to minimize and switch out the use of various tools, such as jackhammers, and instead we use smaller chipping guns, which again, definitely can slow the work down. But I think, in the interest of, trying to be good neighbors and knowing how much of a disruption this can be, we really feel committed to, utilizing different tools at our disposal. Additionally, where it is safe, we have put mufflers on all equipment to further stifle the noise. We have replaced the backup alarm that is required for site safety on all of our excavation machines to a lower pitch. Unfortunately, because it is a large tool, we can't just do away with the backup alarm. We want to make sure that our workers are safe during this construction, but we have lowered the pitch to that backup alarm. Additionally, we weld the street plates on Lexington Avenue every Friday to allow for quieter traffic during the weekend. So sometimes if, when we're doing construction and people hear the boom, boom from the metal street plate, we weld those down so you don't hear as much as a reverberation coming back. Additionally, we have really tried to resequence our work every night. So to do the louder work earlier in the evening, our work hours are from 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. So if we have some of the louder work, we try to do that within the 10 p.m. to 12 a.m. time frame. Again, we recognize that, it's hard for a lot of the residents, but again, doing some of the resequencing, we have seen has been able to help us keep on track with this project, but also be mindful of neighbors above. Additionally, we have tried to move sidewalk and street demolition to day work when possible. Again, we are restricted by our permit that there are particular periods of time during the day, daylight hours, that we are not allowed to work. And so again, where we can do that, we will always make sure to prioritize moving any daytime work that we can possibly do to that time. Additionally, as I talked about, we provide the biweekly look ahead schedule to all stakeholders so that folks can prepare for the work to come. And then additionally, Joe, can you go forward?
Sorry.
Thanks. We also are really trying to rework our schedule to stack any necessary construction under the street. Can you go back, Joe? Thank you. Under the street to Q3 of 2023, further reducing the work. So that was one of the things that Joe talked about. Once we are able to start working further down below, there will be less noise that folks hear sort of on the surface. And so we're really looking to stack that, whatever construction might be loudest to that period once we are fully and completely under the street. But again, we still have a lot of work to do to get to that point. But we are really feeling very committed to keeping these noise mitigation techniques ongoing. Next slide. So we ask folks to definitely reach out if you want to learn more about the project. We do have a 24-hour project hotline. The number is listed there. You will be able to talk to a live person. We receive and respond to project-related emergencies, complaints and issues from the public. If it is a non-project related emergency, we always tell folks, please call 911. You can use 311 to submit all related noise complaints. Additionally, we ask that Imperial House shareholders contact Frank, the residential building general manager, who typically coordinates project concerns with our team, in addition to reaching out to me. We like to do that so that Frank is aware of any and all issues, and he can also tailor any individual solutions for folks' individual apartments. We just want to make sure that everyone is aware of all of the ways that they can not just get in contact with me, but also making sure to loop in their building manager. Again, my contact information is there. Folks are free to reach out respectfully. Additionally, we will continue to distribute the construction and biweekly look ahead schedules. And again, I'm here to receive and respond respectfully to complaints and issues from the public. We've had some issues, I think, with communication with some of the residents. And again, I would just ask that, we are always here to listen to complaints and to give responses. And I know that sometimes the responses I give might not be what you want to hear, but we ask that, I will always keep it professional, and I always ask that folks do the same with me. Next slide.
Okay.
So we're here to take questions and comments, and we want to thank the board so much for their time this evening.
Thank you for the presentation. Let's go to the public. I see Bruce Gerber, a public member of the public. Can we unmute him, please?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So your noise mitigation it's nice that you're trying to do that, but it does not work. I listen to jackhammering. I listen to metal plates falling all night. The noise readings are conveniently taken when the noise levels are lower. So you're not getting a true feeling of what's going on. People in this building are getting sick because they cannot sleep. I understand you have to do this at night. Your noise barriers are not put up unless somebody goes down and asks them to be put up. So nothing's being done to take into the consideration of what is happening to the people who live in this building who face 68th Street. It's just horrendous. There are kids, we spoke to families who have young kids. They can't sleep. They have to go to school in the morning. There are older people who are getting high blood pressure and all kinds of problems because they don't sleep. Something's got to be done. I realize you have to do this work, but I don't understand why the loudest work has to be done sometime between 12 and 1 o'clock. I mean, I could show you exactly what I listen to. It's just incredible. I'm going to play something that just happened the other night, right outside my window. I don't know if you can hear that or not.
No.
We can. So I want to say that our noise monitors run 24/7. So that also includes when we are not doing work. So the noise monitors are picking up ambient noise from Lexington Avenue, vehicular traffic, you know, pedestrian. It's capturing everything. And so for our purposes, we really try to hone in on, you know, the particular times that we are doing work, but the noise monitor is capturing work 24 hours. It's capturing noise 24 hours, 7 days a week.
Yeah, but the noise monitors, I mean, I know you have a monitor hooked up on Lexington and 68th Street right on the corner, but the work is being done closer to 3rd Avenue under our windows. So way more than 50 feet away, probably 250 feet away or more. So what that noise monitor is picking up is not the true sound that's coming off. And it's just frustrating to be woken up every single night with metal plate slamming. And you have that machine that goes up and down the street making this god-awful noise. And I know you said you try to lower it. Believe me, it doesn't sound like you lowered it from where I am. And I mean, we've had, and I know, Lucille, I mean, you've had some emails with us, my wife and I, and other people in the building. And we had a Zoom meeting back in November where we were promised that in about 3 weeks, you were going to come up with another way of mitigating the noise. Nothing ever happened. That was in November. We're now in March, and this thing's going to go on. I think somebody has to take a look at this in real life and see what it's doing to people and try to do something about it. I'm not telling you to stop the project. Believe me, it's an important project. We understand that. Nobody wants to stop a project that's important, but there needs to be some consideration to the people who are getting seriously affected by all this noise.
Thank you for your comment, Bruce.
You're welcome.
Can I just follow up on Mr. Gerber's comment? He said there was is there only the one noise monitor on Lexington Avenue? There's not one around where he is and on other places?
As far as I know, we have multiple noise monitors that are put up around the project site.
Well, maybe you could, if you could send it to the board office where those locations are, you would just check that. We'd appreciate it. Okay. Next, Boaz Galil. Can we unmute Boaz?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I just want to say that I fully support this work. Well done. I mean, I hope that whatever the community board can do to push the MTA to add more elevators to all the stations to make everything accessible. Because you know, there are people I mean, I for example, I have a newborn and I don't have a car, so I cannot use any station that doesn't have elevator. So thank you very much, and yeah, continue with the good job. Thank you.
Thank you. I think, you know, we recognize that obviously there is a deep need for greater accessibility around the system. And again, I think we are very mindful of the trade-offs of, you know, bringing new elevators to the system, but also recognizing that neighbors also feel concerned about noise, excessive noise, and disruption. So, we're here to try to balance both needs of both our accessible riders and not just folks that are disabled, but folks that just need greater accessibility, parents with strollers, and other folks that utilize Hunter College Station, which is a heavily trafficked station. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So let's see. I don't see any other hands up from the public. Let's go to the board and Rita Popper. Rita.
First of all, hi, Joe.
Hi, Rita.
Joe and I spent 10 years together on the Second Avenue subway. Of course, I live in the 90s, so I understand what everybody is saying about the noise level. We had the same thing, but I'm really concerned about somebody who's stuck in a wheelchair on a platform because an elevator doesn't work. Is there a mechanism on the elevator that it can be manually brought up to the mezzanine level, or from the mezzanine level to the street level if there is a malfunction in the elevator?
Rita, I'll have to double check with you. I don't know. Dilip Patel from our project team is on. I don't know if he knows off the top of his head. He may need to be unmuted, but I'll have to double check with you. Per code now, all of our newer elevators, and I'm just not sure when in the life cycle of this contract award, if that code was, implemented for this elevator. My understanding it is yes for all of our new elevators, that there are new service and communications methods, remote abilities to remote into all of these elevators. But Dilip, you may know better in this regard.
You understand, I'm terrified that somebody who is just disabled is stuck.
No, understood.
The other part of this is service on these elevators, and we don't have an escalator. We don't have, as we had with the Second Avenue subway. You don't have ramps. I mean, I understand why, because there's no room. But what assurances can we give that people who are disabled, who take the elevator, that we could get them safely to the floor to get them out of there? That's my concern.
So Joe, Dilip here. Joe, you asked me.
Yeah.
Typically, all these elevators now, once they go in service or before they go in service, typically they are talking back NYPD fire department. So once you press that switch inside, the fire department will be at the location in no time. And whatever Rita is saying, yes, they can able to pull up the elevator at the desired location, wherever it is safe for the customer. So all these elevators are equipped with that, Joe.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
I know you do the best, Joe. We thank you. Second Avenue subway is doing great. Thank you.
Thanks, Rita. Good seeing you.
Okay, next we're going to Michelle Birnbaum.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, let me say it was an excellent presentation. So thank you, Joe and Lucille. It was very, very well done, easy to understand. And so I appreciate that. It's interesting about the escalators. To me, they're noticeably absent, not necessarily to service the disabled community, but just you have such steep stairways there. So one of my questions is, why wasn't escalators included? I know you always need stairs also, I guess, because escalators need to be serviced and they break down as well. But with such a steep access, I wondered why they're absent from the project on all corners.
It's a great question, and I know escalators were considered here. One of the problems we have with escalators, because a lot of folks, if you aren't using a wheelchair, or there's still folks with mobility issues who an escalator is enough, or if with packages or health conditions that might otherwise not necessarily require them to take an elevator, that an escalator would suffice. However, escalators need a really, really large footprint because of all of the mechanics that go along with them, and because of the angle at which, or the incline, to use stair terms, the rise and run of the escalator itself, they would need to be so long and so far removed from the station footprint here in this particular location in order to be useful. But again, I'll defer to Dilip if I'm mischaracterizing, the constraints here that prevent us from using escalators.
Yeah, I think, Joe, your point is a right one. We need to mold real estate for the escalator. Not only that, in order to maintain or run the escalator, you have to have called escalator machine room. Is another piece of real estate you need to operate the elevator. As it is, as you can see, 68 sheet, you have shown all the maps and what, very, very congested station. There's not enough room for the escalators.
Okay, no, I understand, because to me, with how steep this was, they were noticeably absent. So obviously they've been considered. Just a couple of other things. On the 69th and Lexington entrance on the north side, the southwest corner of 69th, you're looking at it here. When this was originally discussed, there was a lot of concern that this is a landmarks building. And there was some concern about invading it in some way. So how has that been resolved here? As I'm looking at the stair, it appears to me that it is only on the street, but did you need to go into the building with any of the work being done here, and how did you resolve that?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, Dilip, I was going to say, I know that we've coordinated with Shippo, who manages these type of this coordination, but I'm just going to defer to Dilip to talk a little bit about it.
Yeah, so we have gotten the foundation detail of the Hunter Hall building. What does it look like? We did some test pit. We know what kind of soil underground we have. It is coming very close to the building. However, our design, which has reviewed and accepted by all the parties, is independent of the foundation of this building. In other words, we are not introducing any additional load to the building foundation. That is a preliminary goal or primary goal of the design. Then we have achieved that.
So you've achieved that. So you haven't been, it hasn't been, the building hasn't been compromised or invaded.
No, not at all.
That's good to hear.
Primary goal of the design. Yes, correct.
Okay, I have two other questions. One is about rodent mitigation, since you're so open all over the place and so close to residences. So do you have rodent mitigation traps or whatever you do to have, because it's open all around, and you are going pretty deep, so I have I'm sure there are plenty of rats that have to be
Unfortunately, it's a byproduct of doing work in the city, and obviously Community Board 8 knows full well, while we were doing Second Avenue subway, this was always a topic of conversation. Rodents, vectors, as they're so termed, like soft ground to burrow in, and whether sometimes folks equate the construction to an increase in rats. The fact of the matter is we may disturb an existing burrow, but they were there already. So it's not as if the construction breeds rats, but we certainly can displace them, which brings them to the surface and folks see them more frequently. They do also like readily available food sources, so garbage and a high density of restaurants. Typically, you'll see more because of the refuse from the restaurants. They like to eat well as well. So we do have vector mitigation plans for all of our construction projects, primarily baiting with inside the work zones. But we do also coordinate with Department of Health. And I have not seen, and Lucille, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I have not seen any real complaints about rats associated with this work. But if there are, and we need to get DOH to come out as well and take a look to make sure that we're not creating an unnecessary harborage for vectors, or if there's something that we can do better, then we're happy to do that, because we do coordinate with our city, our agency partners who are the experts in these sort of things. So happy to do that if folks are seeing that.
Okay, but do you, and I have one last question, but just to follow up on this one. So, but you do have a mitigation protocol
Correct.
that is in position now.
Correct.
And
Yeah,
as
there
far as you
are
know-
baiting stations, and then the
Okay.
baiting stations are monitored to see what kind of activity at those baiting stations,
Okay.
and then it's adjusted accordingly based on the activity.
Okay, good. So you haven't had any complaints to the progress, to what you're doing now. Last question. According to the graphic, the entry at the Imperial House on the east side of Lexington, it looks as though it's on the sidewalk. Is any of it invading the Imperial House? Are you inside the Imperial House as you go down?
Sorry. So it actually is flush with the building. The entrance itself is flush with the building, but then we go underneath the footprint. But Dilip, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I was saying, so we purchased the property inside the Imperial House. Entire stairway is inside the Imperial House with the purchased property. Sidewalk will be used by customer entering the subway. So it is a flush. Entrance is a flush with the building line. We are not going out.
No, I saw that the entrance is flush.
Right.
As you go down, however, are you in the Imperial House underground? Do you take any?
Yeah, that's what I was going to get to, Michelle. Essentially, Dilip, was there any loss of we took an easement here, obviously a permanent easement here for the entranceway, but was there a loss of any functional property here for Imperial House?
No, one incident happened, some small leak happened during construction, but immediately we reacted and we took care with the Frank Duran. Other than that, it went very well. We were required to isolate our work with the Imperial House, and which we achieved. We are not interfering with any operation whatsoever.
You didn't have to take an office in the basement, a laundry room. You didn't have to take anything from them.
No, not at all. No.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Excellent presentation, and I wish you well going forward.
Thank
you.
Rita, one last question here, because we have to move on.
Having to do with service for the elevators, one who physically services them and cleans them, and the other, how does somebody who is responsible at the station for reporting if there is an outage?
So
I'm scared of somebody getting stuck.
I hear that. So the elevators will be maintained by the stations team. And I'm happy to share the group station manager for 68th Street. And so once that elevator is complete, the team will, go forward with, a regularly maintained cleaning schedule for most of our elevators, particularly at high traffic locations. The elevator is getting cleaned at least 3 times a day. Sometimes it has to be more if, if someone, defecates in the elevator, there's, trash or it's not clean. But our folks do try to get to that elevator at least 3 times within a day.
Thank you.
Before we move on, so hi Joe.
Hey Craig.
Good to see you. thank you to both of you for a great presentation, for all the time that each of you have spent on this call tonight. This is probably a little longer than I think you bargained for, but it's great. So looking forward, beyond this project, in case people haven't seen, it was just announced that the next accessibility project in our neighborhood is going to be at the 86th Street station. So I'm just wondering if you can tell us anything. I assume not, it's very early, but even if you have a general sense of the timing in which we can expect you to come back to us and give us a little presentation on what we can
Yeah,
anticipate.
slightly premature on that. I mean, right now it was announced and it's in design, but the RFP is only just gone out for the actual construction side of things. So it'll be a while yet. I mean, maybe the hope is by the end of the year that'll be awarded, and we'll have some more detail for you on that by end of year. Once we get a contractor on board, because especially in a situation like this and moving forward on a lot of these projects when it's design build, unlike Second Avenue Subway, which was fully designed in advance, so we could talk educatedly about a lot of things. We have some suppositions, but when you bring that design build team on, we're really looking for their innovation to try to, improve upon what we think can be done here, and to be able to deliver it, better, faster, and cheaper. So that real concrete schedule, phasing, timeline, things like that, we won't have until after we get a contractor on board.
But I can say that it will make the station fully accessible. Right now, there's an elevator that is just servicing the 6th line. These new elevators for 86th Street will service the 4, 5, and 6. So making the complex fully accessible.
We all look very much forward to that, and we appreciate even this information, just knowing that maybe towards the end of the year, we can hopefully learn a little more as this progresses. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. And, with this project and with all the projects that we talked about tonight, we will keep in very close contact. I speak with Will on a weekly basis and just really appreciate the board having us this evening and being able to share our progress with CB8 residents. So thank you.
Thank you for your presentations, both, and we appreciate you coming and spending the time, as Craig said.
Thank you. And if you ever have any questions about things like that, Craig or Chuck, feel free to give me a call. My contact information remains the same. I know I owe Barry and Judy a call, so, always reach out.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Joe.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay. Next, we have a public hearing for the Site C Bus Company use of an intercity bus stop request from Aurora Tourism Services for the west side of 5th Avenue between East 61st and East 62nd Street. Is there anyone here? Now, we had this on last month, but there was no one there and I see someone from Aurora Tourism. So why don't you introduce yourself and go ahead and make a presentation.
Good evening. My name is Oluwabamiche Jegede, the president of Aurora Tourism Services LLC.
Thank you. Good. Why don't do you want to make a presentation to us tonight?
Not really, but I just want to do a quick background regarding our operation. We are a sightseeing company, a minority-owned sightseeing company in New York. We've been in the process of having permit for bus stop for quite a while, since about 2019. And this is the closest we have gotten close to having stops. That's about it.
Well, can you tell us on how many stops we'll be making at this 5th Avenue site? This is a bus stop already, obviously, but how many times will you be stopping during the day then?
So did you say how many stops have we been making, or how many would we be making?
Yes, during the day, each day.
Yeah, each day we we have not stopped there at all so far, but we plan to be stopping every 2 hours from the morning till the night hours.
Well, when you say the morning, is that around starting at when, 8 o'clock or so?
8 o'clock, yes.
I think that's what the letter said. And ending, when will you be ending then?
12 p.m.
12?
12 a.m. Sorry.
12 a.m. Okay, so it's from 8 a.m. to 12 a.m. So, okay. And do you have any layover spot in the city at all? Where will you be coming from?
We'll be coming from our parking is in Staten Island, and we would not be laying over in the city. The only layover that we've considered is close to South Street, close to Pier 36 in South Street.
Okay.
That's having layover sometimes.
Right. And which bus there? I know there are a number of buses that stop there on different hours on that stop. I don't know if is Colleen still here? I don't know if she's here today.
Hi,
Well,
Chuck. Yes, I'm here.
Yeah.
I think in the letter, it states if there's any buses that are using that stop.
Yeah.
Does
Right,
it specify?
The letter states the BXM3, BXM4, which I assume are drop-off locations for those, since those are inbound from the Bronx.
From the Bronx. Yeah.
And Grade Line New York tours also use that.
Okay.
Okay, so the BX, those are drop-offs. So it's not like, they're laying over there for long periods of time.
Right.
And,
Although I was going to ask how long each time the bus arrives and stops, how long do you anticipate loading taking place for?
I would, we cross-reference the intercity applicant schedule with the buses that are currently using that location, and there's no overlap. So maybe the gentleman would like to talk about how long they're going to be occupying if it's expeditious pickup and drop off.
Yes.
Yes, we'll be doing a quick pick up and drop off. It takes us about 2-3 minutes to have people who are already in line to get on the bus, not more than 5 minutes. And it's a little bit easier when they are disembarking on the bus. That's between 3 minutes and probably not more than 5 minutes.
And these passengers will already have tickets?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is there anyone from the public that wants to comment on this application? I don't see anyone, but so let's go to Michelle. Go ahead, Michelle.
Thanks, Chuck. So this is a tourism business. Can you tell us the nature of that, and if these people have baggage? Do they have luggage with them?
Yes, ma'am. It's sightseeing. We don't take luggage on the bus. We expect people to come with their reservation and stay in line at the scheduled time. And the bus arrives and we put them on the bus and we leave immediately. And if we would disembark them, we would disembark them, but boxes are not allowed on the bus. Luggage are not allowed on the bus.
So it's a sightseeing tour around various parts of the city? Is that what you mean?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it a double-decker bus?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And would this be your only stop, or do you have pickup? Are you picking up elsewhere in the city?
Yes, ma'am. We will be picking up in other locations.
Do you mind sharing that with us?
We have applied and believe we've been approved for about 9 other locations. In consideration of spreading the population of our potential customers, we would prefer to pick them across the city. That means we don't want people to stay or to be queuing up in just one location. So that would be able to help the traffic. So this particular location, if approved, would be about our 9th location, though we've not started operating in any of them yet.
If I may interject, Michelle,
Yeah.
this is the only location in CB8. The other locations that he mentioned are spread out in other community boards.
Okay, so this is the only, my only concern with this location is 61st Street. It's just before the turn into sort of the little turn that takes you onto Central Park South. And so cars wanting to go there necessarily move into that right lane. And that's always a bottleneck now. So that's of concern. And we're saying that this bus will be coming every 2 hours from 8 a.m. till midnight. So I think that that's not the best corner for this activity, because it's just before where they have to turn. I can see a stop after that turn, maybe further down 5th. But I think this location is not a great idea.
Well, I don't know. I think I know that location and I know the turn there, but I think as you get further down below 59th Street, I mean, you're getting very crowded into very commercial areas. Here, at least here, there's the traffic on the sidewalks and stuff is very limited where that stop would be. And they're not stopping for long. So that's why I'm sure that's why they picked it. But
it is near the bus stop. I mean, it is problematic.
Yeah,
I
but I
don't
mean,
know if Fifth Avenue is the best location.
it's not a bus stop it's just for the Bronx bus and another sightseeing bus. So it's not, I mean, it's not really continuous buses.
And do we know how this would coincide with their schedules?
I think Colleen said they don't
overlap.
They don't overlap.
The schedule, so there's no overlapping, Michelle.
Now, I don't know whether the gentleman wants to say anything. We're from Aurora. Do you want to comment on that?
Yes, sir. I was going to add that the other bus company that was operating there before, Gray Line City Sightseeing, it's not operating at the moment. I just want to bring that to your attention.
Oh, well, that's important. So this is a replacement for what was? In other words, the Gray Line does not
Red line. He was saying red line.
Oh, red line. I'm sorry.
But the red line still Gray Line still operates.
Sorry?
Gray Line City Sightseeing. They double-decker.
My question is this new operation replacing somebody that was there, or is it in addition to?
This is not replacing any operation. This is new.
This is new, but was there a bus that was operating there before that is no longer operating there? Not necessarily affiliated with Aurora, just another facility?
It's not affiliated to Aurora, but there was a bus company that was operating there, but we don't know yet if they're going to come back. So I can't say for sure whether that company is coming back and how soon they'll come back there.
And if they don't, then it's not an issue. If they do come back, how does their schedule coincide with Aurora?
So if they do come back again, we will look at their schedules to make sure that there's no overlapping.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
We do have comment from the public. Maggie Lehman, can we unmute Maggie Lehman?
Thanks, Charles. I was going to raise the question that Michelle raised. It's a very, very busy corner. Not only the traffic, as Michelle just described it, but it's loaded with tourists, with families trying to cross, that sort of cul-de-sac where the plaza is, where, right down there where the entrance to Central Park is. And while the DOT letter says that it's a wide sidewalk on 5th, if I'm not mistaken, right around there are loads of carts and trucks selling New York souvenirs, the Strand book cart, the pretzels. Yeah. So it's jammed. But I wanted to call the attention to the gentleman, the president of Aurora, that while he mentioned that the buses would be running from 8 a.m. to 12 a.m. The DOT letter says 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. So I just wondered about that discrepancy. And then the last thing that I wanted to ask about was, as I read it in the DOT letter, the second bullet, I read the MTA, then the two different BX buses, and the gray line. I'm not sure whether the MTA means the Fifth Avenue downtown bus or whether the MTA refers to the BX buses. So I don't know whether it's 3 different bus lines or actually 4, and thus this Aurora would be the 5th, either the 4th or the 5th. Lastly, the last paragraph of the DOT letter, perhaps Colleen, you could help us out. The last sentence says the sightseeing bus company will provide commuter service. And so I'm just a little confused on that. So there's my bunch of questions. Thanks very much, Charles.
Yeah.
So this is a sightseeing request. And that must have been a typo where it says commuter service, but it is a sightseeing request.
I guess, are there city buses there, Colleen, besides the BMX buses?
Well, I
No.
can actually answer that, right. I was just looking and confirming. The New York City transit buses, meaning the M1, M2, M3, M4, are on the northern half of that block. So there's a separate bus stop there, and then closer to 61st Street on the southern half of that block is where this bus stop is for the express buses and Gray Line and the proposed Aurora bus.
So it's the 2 BMX buses, the Gray Line, and then proposed Aurora.
Correct. At a
Yeah.
with a separate pole, separate stop from
Right.
your New York City transit buses that operate on Fifth Avenue.
Yeah. Okay, wasn't clear. Okay. Rita? Let's go to Rita.
And then
Go ahead, Rita.
If there are no further comments,
Right.
I make a motion to accept the proposal as presented.
Is there a second to that? And can we see a second?
I'll second it. And
Okay.
Sharon seconded it.
Okay, couple of seconds. Okay, any further discussion? Michelle, do you want to say something? Okay, quickly.
Yeah, I just want to ask Colleen, if we approve that, will you be able to guarantee us that if that other bus line, that other tourist bus comes back, or whatever kind of bus it was, comes back, that you will do a review and come and report to us?
Of course we will.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so why don't we vote? Craig, do you want to call a roll, see if everybody's still here? I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, a few people have dropped off. So it's myself, Chuck, Michelle, Judy, Lori, Mohit, Mrs. Brown, Rita, and Sharon that I see currently.
Anyone else? If they let us know if you're okay. All right, so if you're in favor, you don't have to do anything. Anyone opposed or abstaining or not voting for cause should raise their hand. Okay, looks like I don't see any hands raised, so it passes unanimously, and we'll just tell the gentleman it'll be at our board meeting on the 15th. It'll be taken up by the full board, and you can on our website you can see where that meeting will be on Zoom on March 15th. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Okay, next item. This is a request for a parking regulation change for 1289 Lexington Avenue, change from metered parking to no parking. Is there someone here on behalf of that? Okay.
Yes, Andrew LaSalle. Thank you.
Okay. Why don't you go ahead and Andrew, and give us a presentation here.
Thank you, Chuck. So this is a request for a 24-hour no parking zone along the northeast corner of 86th Street and Lexington Avenue to the lamppost just north of the 1289 Lexington Avenue entrance. It's a total of about 100 feet plus or minus. So some more detail here is there's an MTA elevator at the corner of East 86th Street where it meets Lexington Avenue. Now, this is the only elevator access to this subway, the 4, 5, and 6 subway line between 125th Street and 51st Street. And currently, there's not a passenger drop-off location anywhere near this MTA elevator, which means double parking is required, anywhere you go in order for a mobility impaired person to actually get out of a car and access the zone, access the elevator area there. East 86th Street does not have a parking lane adjacent to this elevator. In fact, it's actually jogged out on that section of the street there. So you're right in the traffic if you stop. There's no parking lane there. It's just a traffic lane. Lexington Avenue currently has either commercial or general metered parking rules on that block between 86 and 87 of Lexington. The best passenger drop-off location for this area would be the east end of Lexington Avenue, the southeast end of Lexington Avenue between 86 and 87th Streets, which I described earlier. In addition, at 1289 Lexington, there's a number of building residents that are seniors and mobility impaired, and that double parking creates a public nuisance as Lexington Avenue only has 2 lanes available to the passenger vehicles. A mobility impaired person cannot get a walker or wheelchair between the parked cars on the east side of Lexington Avenue. Their only option is to have their driver park in the middle of that crosswalk at 86th Street, let the person out of the corner. However, this then creates problems for people who need to cross Lexington Avenue, and then they then need to enter traffic to get around the parked cars that holds a person trying to get out. Furthermore, this affects the people coming to 1289 Lexington, those going to the Chase Bank and those going to the subway.
Okay. Any public comments? I don't see any. Michelle? Michelle?
Thank you. Yeah, I couldn't support this. I'll tell you why. The access to the elevator is not relevant to what the gentleman is requesting at 1289. 1289 is on Lexington Avenue. The Lucida on the south side of the street is on Lexington Avenue also. Most buildings in our district have entrances on a main avenue. So this is not a unique situation. The bump out that was created on the corner of 86th and Lexington was specifically created for 2 reasons. One was to make room for the elevator, and the other was in an effort to have the buses not have to swing in and out of bus stops, but to just be able to go straight across 86th Street. And that's the reason that it's there. The wide sidewalk there is a facilitator to that elevator. And the meters do not go right up to the bump. So if anybody needed to be dropped off to access that elevator, that would be the spot. Nobody accessing that elevator would be dropped off on Lexington Avenue. Now, the fact that, so that's, in terms of accessibility to the subway, that's not a relevant reason to my mind. The fact that there are elderly people in your building or people who need easier access to get into a car or a taxi or a car for hire is an issue. But it's an issue all over the city. It's an issue in front of every building. It's an issue where the city bikes are. For example, on 85th Street, that block entrances to offices and where they have to go to a crosswalk to get onto the sidewalk and get to the building. So this is not, to my mind, a unique enough situation to eliminate the metered parking, which is on Lexington currently, and which services the buildings along Lexington and offers those businesses, their customers can come and go. And for example, across the street, you've got Staples, you've got Best Buy. People often come out with packages or even big packages like a TV set or whatever and might want to use that facility. So to my mind, this has nothing to do with the accessibility to the subway, and I don't think that's a valid consideration for us to grant this access. Thank you.
I think we have a member of the public that wants to comment. Aura Masarski. Can we unmute Mr. Masarski?
Hi, thank you for letting me comment. I'm still amazed.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. By the way, just about the title of the first part of our meeting. To quote the robber bridegroom, I don't think that word means what you think it means. Think about it. I think we meant improvement. In any case, my concern also is about accessibility and so forth. In the last year, I've been walking in the moccasins of people who are mobility challenged and trying to walk through that corner where there's often double parking on that block, which impedes being able to see where you're going when you're trying to cross a street. I can't move terribly fast at this point, and it just seems like, and like Mr. LaSala said, it's the only elevator that is between 57th and 125th. So if you want to go downtown, you have to take the 6 uptown and then transfer, because there's no transfer on these lines, which I understand were built over 100 years ago. So my concern again is, I know there's a setback. I know there's an exit there. There's 2 exits for stairs and 1 for the elevator. But the fact is, the area is difficult to negotiate. There's often double parking, not just metered parking. And if you're trying to cross from that corner to the west side of 86th and Lex, you often can't see what's happening in the downtown lanes, in the main of Lexington Avenue, because there are so many cars that block your way from seeing what's going on, because at least there's 1 car and there's usually 2 parked. So, my concern very much is that if we have a no parking area for that area, at least it'll just make it easier to access the elevator and to cross the street in a matter of safety. Thank you.
I would just like to make a general comment that it's generally been the committee and the board's position that we don't make special parking zones in front of residential buildings unless there are unusual or specific circumstances, the street it's on, the situation where cars are speeding down in certain ways and things like that. And I think I go by I have to, when I come home from work every day, I go right by that building because I exit the stairs going towards 87th Street. And and I think Michelle described the situation very accurately in that whole area. And so is there anyone who wants to offer any action on this?
And I'd just like to add also that we talk about the prospects of a no parking regulation over there, but as we all know, no parking
right
isn't going to necessarily free up that space. It could be used by people with handicap parking license plates and legal handicap parking stickers. There are people who will use illegal placards and park in no parking spaces. So that will not provide any assurances that you'll actually have that space preserved for pickup and drop off. Those spaces will be swallowed up pretty quickly. So I think that's another potential issue with this.
Right. Okay. Further.
If I may, I'd just like to point out that if you're trying to cross from the east side to the west side, oftentimes there are cars coming, making a left-hand turn, and you just cannot see them. So it's just a matter of visibility and safety. And I understand that there are so many abusers in the city of parking placard, parking plates, license plates, Yes, I know, it's all over. But, we also have to kind of deal with the problem that is there. And I don't think it's specific to the building. I think it's specific to the area. Uh, it's it's difficult all over the area because there's so much traffic, and I think Lexington is probably the narrowest avenue on the Upper East Side. And there's just so much traffic that it's very, very difficult if you're moving slowly to be able to, do it safely.
I can tell you, Ms. Masarsky, from our experience, putting a no, as my co-chair said, putting a no parking zone there would not alleviate the double parking at all, because there would be people who would always park in there. It's not like this is going to be something left open. It just doesn't happen that way. And we've gone through this in a number of areas. And in fact, in areas where we really want to put something in, we put a no standing zone in, but that's not what we're talking about here. But the no parking zones will not alleviate the conditions that you're talking about. Okay, I think we should move on. We're not going to take any action on this at this point. So let's move on to item number 5 on our agenda.
Right. Which was a last minute addition because
Right.
we
Exactly.
only learned about it yesterday, and there is
Right. Now, this was the
deadline.
As we know, as I think we all know, we passed a resolution in the committee and the board to say that we don't want these things to go forward until there's a lot more information and things that happen. And of course, they immediately come forward with 3 locations that they want to put things through. And there's one at, East 60th Street between Madison and 5th, East 65th Street between Madison and 5th, and then East 74th Street between 1st and York.
And for those who, I don't know that you actually said what it was. We're talking about 5G poles that go on top of existing lampposts that are located within 10 feet
of a building,
adjacent buildings.
Correct.
So similar to, for those of you who we call the woman who lives at 520 East 90th Street and has that 5G infrastructure right outside her window.
Right.
It's a similar proposal.
Right. And so what we thought we would do here is take this up, and if we have a resolution, we can send that within the 15 days. We'll get it ratified by the board, send that on, and hopefully that'll be enough. So I don't know if anyone wants to comment on this from the public, but why don't I go to the board? Rita first. I'll go to Rita Popper.
My hand was up wrong. Thank you.
You don't want to say anything? Okay. All right. Then I'll go to Michelle Birnbaum. Go ahead, Michelle.
Thank you. Yeah. This is so outrageous because they're getting pushback all over the city.
Right.
And they are proceeding and just installing. On 74th Street, it's already in. And I think the other one in
It's
the
already
60s, yes, it's already been installed.
Really?
That's my understanding.
Are you talking about the Link 5G tower?
No, the tower. I'm talking about the tower.
We're not talking about the towers. We're talking about the attachment to the top of the lamppost. This is not Link 5G. This is 5G.
Oh, right.
5G. No, I know what it is. It has I think it's 4 pods on the top of a 32-foot tower. It's not on top of a telephone tower. It's on top of a separate installation. There was a picture
on top of an existing street light.
Oh, well, my understanding is whatever it is, it's in. And my other understanding is that the other location is in front of Temple Emmanuel. Is that not correct?
Well, Emmanuel's
on 64th, 60.
Well, it's 65th, is it?
Well, yeah, it could be 65th as eastbound, right? 65th is eastbound there. That's my understanding. I mean, I was advised about that today. And my only recommendation, and also I have heard that of the 32-foot towers, of which we had a very strong resolution in opposition, at least not in opposition, but a moratorium, because there's lots more research to be
Right.
done here. And more is coming out about the health concerns, et cetera, et cetera. But my understanding was that there would be consideration prior to any decision to install. And it is true that they're installing, and I think they did it in the West Village also, the actual concrete base that supports these towers in preparation for putting in the tower. So they're going around and they are putting in the bases. Now, what I would like to see happen here is a very strong letter from our chair on behalf of the board saying that we very, very strongly object to the community's wishes being disregarded and no notice about installation. And if a site is chosen, then that site should be heard at the community board. What we voted on was a general resolution, but if somebody came to install it on whatever street, that should be noticed like we do for everything else, and it should be heard. So we can have another resolution tonight to strengthen our resolution, but I think a letter, a very strong letter to it's information and technology, right? Isn't it?
Yeah, yes, yeah, OTI.
OTI, right. I think we should write them a very, very strong letter.
But can I just interject for a second? Because I just want to make sure that we're separating what we've done before in the actions taken, which were related specifically to Link 5G, to this, which is known as a street pole attachment, which typically they wouldn't need to come to us. The only reason they're doing so is because it is located less than 10 feet from an adjacent building. Otherwise, they can put these up wherever they wish.
This is right. This is separate. This is a separate thing. And
well, I'm just seeing if I can find the picture that was sent to me, which I assume was not a doctored picture. I assume it was a real picture. And I'll hold it up to the camera if I can find it. But in either case, when something is installed like that, when the community board has made a purposeful resolution on the distance of such a product, you know, from a residential house, I mean, you know, from a residential facility, I think that we should be just as strong in our opposition.
Yeah, no, I think you know, the 10 feet is the issue, I think.
Right.
And even if it's an existing light pole, they could arrange it so it's not within 10 feet of the building.
Well, they couldn't really if the light pole is there. If the light pole, I mean,
depending on how I don't know how they structure.
Well, they'd have to extend it so far, you know, away from the windows that's not how the mechanism is.
I don't think most light poles are that close to windows. I mean, you don't usually have white.
Well, if you have a narrow residential street like 74th Street, I mean, and the light pole is at the curb 2 or 3 feet in from the curb, you're pretty close to the building.
Well, maybe we could.
Do we have an image? Did anybody send in an image?
I don't know that they
I'm trying to locate this image, you know, while I'm talking.
They sent in. Will, do you have anything on that?
All right. So we received these letters yesterday. That said, you can read the letters. I don't think that they say that like these are already in, but maybe that is the case. As was pointed out, the franchise that was created with the city OTI to do pole top additions, not to be confused with the Link 5G. Only requires any sort of disclosure that they are putting it in to the elected officials in the community board if it is within 10 feet of a adjacent building. So we remember hearing about this at 520 East 90th Street. So there are some images from those people's window that I can show you guys of like what it would look like. But that's like the most I can show you because they don't send us these, and these weren't constituent complaint driven. The reason why it's on our agenda, it's because OTI sent it to us because they have to disclose it. So if everybody
maybe they don't even know, they may not know about it, constituent driven, you know, they may not know about it.
So like there's
Until
no
it's up
example
there.
of photos being sent to me because, you know, this came to us yesterday at like 3 p.m. from the OTI.
I'm going to put a link in the chat that you could share, Will, that hopefully will.
Is it from the West Views News, that one? Because I sent you something. I also put it on my screen.
Let me see. All right. Copy image link and okay. Hopefully this will work. I just sent it over. It's a close-up of what it looks like at the top of the light pole at 520 East 90th Street.
Yeah, I have an image of it from inside as well. So I'll put those up on my screen in 2 seconds. So this is the one from outside. You can see the city light pole with the LED lights pointing towards the ground. And this is the addition on the top. And this is the photo from the inside.
Let me just say that this, without the light extension, looks very much like the poles, the 5G poles.
This is 5G, but these are different franchises, franchisees that the city has put out
that are doing it. But the concept is the same.
Yeah, no,
I mean, the concept is exactly the same. The top ornament looks exactly like the pole without the light extension. So the concept is exactly the same. And I think it's like a distinction without a difference in terms of the effect on the community, you know, and the people who live there, and the health concerns, and the visual blight, and all that. I think that we really should send a letter with very, very strong saying that we're objecting to these things being installed.
Well, I think we should pass a resolution, but include that to the letter, you know, we'll send the letter with our resolution. And we'll do that before, because they give you a 15-day comment period, which
but can we send it down as a committee? Because I don't know that the 15 days doesn't coincide with the board meeting.
We will.
Yeah, just as a committee. Okay.
We've already talked to Russell about this. Yeah.
Great. Okay. Well, now that I spoke, I can't suggest a resolution, but
Okay,
maybe somebody else will.
We're not done yet here. We had a couple of hands up from the public. Let me take those first. We have Boaz Galil. Boaz, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I think that the confusion is that in previous meeting, you guys talked about the one, you know, the homeless in camping are using it, the Link 3 5G towers that are on the street. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, they're not going to be towers, but they're going to be similar to that. Yeah.
Bingo. What this project is, that I'm actually seeing that it's better. I mean, the city is going forward with 5G. I mean, they're already, what we saw in the picture, you can already see it over the city. So the city is moving forward with this technology. What I suggest the committee, you guys will push back, is exactly what we saw in the picture, where they put the 5G in front of someone's window. So just reject. I mean, just reject any addition to any pole that is next to a apartment building, and just reject it. You know, as simple as that. And tell them, first of all, do all the work on the poles that are, and they are already doing it. They don't need your approval. I mean, I work in the city all many hours. I already see it all over the city. They are already doing it. But just, you know, defend the apartment building. That's my suggestion. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I mean, the whole idea, we're not saying they shouldn't put them up, but you don't have to put them up right next to a building. That's the whole issue, right? Lo wants to make a comment here. Lo Vandervalk, so Queen, you Lo. Go ahead,
Yes.
Lo.
My name is Lo Vandervalk. I'm speaking on behalf of Carnegie Hill Neighbors. This is far away from our catchment area, but I think the distinction that Will made, that these are pole top additions, is an important one for OTI, because I think these pole top additions have been approved earlier at the city level, and I think they consist in total planned is something like 13,000 in the city, 13.6 thousand. And maybe we need greater clarification on when the approval was made to install these. But I do recognize it's an important distinction between this and the Link 5G towers, where you have five stations in one pole. This is only one station, and that's why I think they made the distinction earlier. So I think we need more clarity. That's basically what I'm asking. And I agree, if it's this close to someone's window, I'm glad to see that the community board will be opposing.
Thank you, Lo. Okay, Judy Schneider wanted to make a comment. Hi, Judy. Let's unmute Judy.
Hi, what I wanted to say was, rather than Michelle's letter, everything she said was correct, and what you said was correct, Chuck. I would like to make that into a resolution, which could be included in a letter, that these specific locations mentioned are too close to residences, etc., and everything else we said.
And they should find another location, essentially.
They should find another location, and then I would have another whereas, that any other locations in Community District 8, that we be notified before they're about to put them in, that they give us some time to review the locations, because they're obviously not doing that.
Yeah, well, we'll try to figure out some things, because as Craig said, they don't have to let us know if they're outside of 10 feet. So, but we'd like to know anyway. So,
but we would like to know anyway, but we specifically want to know. I don't want one outside my apartment window. And I'm sure that most people that are on this call don't want one outside their apartment window.
Okay,
I mean, they're so pretty to look at. So is there a second to the resolution?
Yes, there were seconds. I see Sharon second and others. There were other seconds. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion here now? Michelle, you wanted to say anything? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't think it's, if Judy will accept this, I don't think it's enough to just say in front of these locations. I think we have to say in front of any location. And you know, that bridges the 10 feet, but I have to say, we sort of have pulled that 10 feet out as though that's a given, that if you're beyond that, you're beyond the danger zone. You know, there's more going on here. They need partners such as Verizon or AT&T or whoever they need. And Verizon is already running 5G into the buildings. And 5G in the buildings is far more efficient and reliable than the wireless version. And to me, the reason they came up this wireless version is just a very big money grab. They already have a contract with the city. They have that contract long before they presented it to anybody in any of the communities anywhere. They signed the contract. I think contracts can be broken, but I see this as a completely inefficient way of providing 5G. Nobody is opposed to having 5G, but the efficient and the healthy way to do it is into the buildings.
But that's
And
not
instead-
5G, Michelle. That's fiber
No.
optics. That's not.
Yes, but
Yeah,
they
they're
can
different.
provide.
They're different technologies.
No, but it's a different technology, but you can provide 5G service through that
It's
technology.
fiber optic service. It's not 5G service. Like, I'm
But-
not a
but-
technology expert here, but that those two
No,
are
I
very
understand.
distinct.
I
different things.
understand that, but my understanding was that it's as efficient, but it's not wireless, and it's the wireless nature of this that's creating the issue.
But I
At
think
any rate, we're not arguing that tonight. So for the purpose of tonight and for this resolution, we're going to say 10 feet as though that's a given, that it's really safe if it's more than 10 feet. I don't know if that's true, but for the purpose of this resolution, I would not just say in this location, but in any location that breaches 10 feet of the windows of a building. And mind you, not just residential. I think it's just as concerning for office buildings.
Yeah. No, that 10 feet is reasonable. I just want to be careful that we don't just have a resolution that inadvertently goes beyond, I think, what we're aiming to do and starts to get into 5G as a technology and the concerns regarding that. Because this is different from Link 5G in terms of what its intent is. This is I believe, if I'm understanding this, the cellular carriers themselves that are requesting this location to fill in holes for their service, as opposed to provide free service to everyone. So again, I agree with what you're saying in terms of that 10 feet universally, but I just want to be careful if we go beyond that.
Well, you can be careful of the wording, but I think you have to take into consideration that the concerns about this technology are all over the place. So it has not been determined to be benign. And we've come up with this 10-foot rule as though that solves all the problems. And I don't think that's the case. So however you can word that doesn't get you in deeper than you want to be. But I think we should comment on that further than just saying that we're not approving these particular locations. It should be like any location that would breach a window, residential or commercial, by 10 feet. And I wouldn't mind if it's Judy's resolution, if we put in there, whereas all of the information, in other words, this issue is still ongoing in terms of the information we're getting, and to somehow acknowledge that and say that we recognize that all the information on this technology is still coming in, and we want to be able to revisit this in the future as new information comes out, that kind of thing. I think that would be a valid thing to put in there.
All right, well, I don't know if it's Judy's resolution, how Judy.
Well, let's ask her.
Well, that's what I'm saying, yeah. Judy, do you want to respond to that?
That's unmute, Judy.
Yeah. Good.
Sorry, she's taking a little bit of time to unmute, and then I remuted her. Judy, hit it again.
Okay. Yeah, I think that they should be. That's why I said there should be a second, therefore be it resolved, that they should be notifying us well in advance of any location that they want to put these in Community District 8. Don't you
Well,
think that's,
I think what Michelle is saying to have, instead of just saying we don't approve, we disapprove these specific locations, but that also we don't want any locations within 10 feet anywhere.
right, and we want to be notified about them. Right.
Well, I have to notify you if they're within 10 feet, but if not, I mean, so you're okay with her,
Yeah, that's fine, but I also want to be notified about
Right.
anything else that
Okay.
in their
Gotcha.
infinite wisdom that they think is so wonderful to do.
So you're basically saying, let me just make sure I'm understanding. You're saying that in addition to the notifications that are obligatory when they
These
are within 10 feet,
no. Yeah, because they're 10 feet.
that we should be notified of any light pole that is proposed to have a 5G element installed on top of it.
Correct. And if you want to mention within 10 feet or more than, we want to know what's going on in our community district, and they're not telling us until the last minute when they want to stick it up.
Well, there's two things here. I guess they don't have to notify us, right? If it's greater than 10 feet from any building, right?
Yeah, and that's a citywide contract.
Is
Right.
that's
a citywide
true?
agreement, whatever.
That's a citywide agreement.
Oh,
Right. So
well,
so that's why I'm asking, are you suggesting that
Okay.
we want to
no, I
oppose
don't
that?
believe in passing resolutions that, no, within 10 feet.
Within
Because
10 feet.
that's the citywide.
Well, they do have to notify us within 10 feet. We'd maybe like to get more notice because they give you notice and say a 15-day comment period. Doesn't
Yeah, that's not
give you
enough
any time.
notice.
Right. It doesn't give you any time. Now, that may be in the contract, but that doesn't mean they couldn't give you.
Give you more notice because
More
they
notice.
know more than 15 days.
Well, of course they do. Okay, I think we got it. Are there any further comments, people who just have to say something?
Sharon and Rita?
Okay, all right, Sharon.
I'd like to call the question on Judy's resolution.
Okay.
But I was hoping you'd say.
Yeah, and also if it could be explained again, I really would appreciate it, but I'm calling the question.
Okay, anybody opposed to calling a question there at this point? I don't see anyone.
I think
I assume
might
Rebecca
be, but-
Dangor is not opposed to it, if I know Rebecca. Okay, all right, so
Do
why
you want to
do you
just
wanna-
repeat? Do you want to repeat it? I think
Yeah,
Sharon-
basically what we're doing here is saying we oppose these three locations that are within 10 feet of the building, and we oppose all other locations in the district when they're within 10 feet of the building, and we want to get more notice before the 15-day period starts running, so we can have more time to let the public comment, etc. That's is that about right?
And
Go up,
Rebecca
Will.
has a point of information.
Oh, she has a point of information. Rebecca Dangor, okay.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that I would love to hear the exact locations included.
Yeah, the exact locations are going to be included, yes.
No, but does that include the hospital corridor that was addressed last time?
Well, there's East 74th Street between First and York, one of those locations. But these are different than the poles we were talking about, right? These are not these big poles.
Yeah.
These are off
Okay,
the
I
light.
just wanted to make sure because I missed a little bit of the meeting.
Yeah.
Now I know what your concern is, Rebecca, and this is different.
Thanks. Just needed to make sure.
That's okay. No problem. Okay, you want to, so we're ready to vote here?
Let me read the roll, just make sure we're.
I just want to clarify, Rita, Judy, and Sharon all put their hands up. I don't know whether they have
Well,
point of
Sharon
information.
called the question, so I think, I don't know.
Or they're voting against it. They're just jumping the line to vote, but
Okay,
I'm putting all the hands down.
Okay, all the hands down.
Okay, so it's myself, Chuck, Judy, Lori, Michelle, Mohit, Mrs. Brown, Rebecca Dangor, and Rita and Sharon.
Okay, if anyone else is there, please raise your hand or whatever. Okay, so we're ready to vote. If you don't want, if you're for it, you don't do anything. If you're against, want to vote no, abstain, or not voting for cause, please raise your hand. Okay, I see no hands raised, so that's unanimous.
Wait,
Do we-
Judy,
Do we
wanna-
have some, I want to see if we have any updates from DOT, if Colleen has anything.
All right, Colleen?
Hey Chuck, I don't have anything much to update the
Okay.
committee.
That's fine.
All
And we
right.
haven't, do we have any old, do we have
I
any,
have, well, I have an update or old business, how route.
right, old or new business? Go ahead.
I think
yield
Judy
the-
may have a hand up to ask Colleen something.
Oh, okay. Well, Colleen's still here. Okay, Judy. Let's recognize Judy and then.
No, actually, I have something on what we just voted on in addition. These lights or these 5G poles keep going up on Fifth Avenue, Park Avenue. Why aren't they doing anything in front of Stanley Isaacs or, I
Well,
mean,
that was in our last resolution.
was it? What
Yeah.
did, I don't remember. What did we
Yeah, we
say?
said we
Because I
wanted
was
them-
gonna say, write another letter about that.
Well, the idea was this is supposed to with the polls, it was supposed to be underserved areas. And we asked that question, why not anything? And we did have that in our resolution.
Did
So,
we ever
I
get
think
a reply from?
No, not yet, no.
Well, maybe we could do a follow-up letter if we don't hear anything by next month. That was my
Yeah.
only comment.
Okay.
I've emailed OTI and I've emailed the mayor's office many times to get a response to this resolution and our letter.
Okay.
Okay, so let's see now. Rebecca Dangor.
Well, wait, I was gonna provide my updates.
Oh, sorry, your update, sorry.
So if you may recall, last month there was an inquiry from a member of the public regarding the construction at the Xtel site at 79th and First and where the construction vehicles are staging. So there was a request to actually invite Xtel to our meeting, and we did. We actually received a letter from one of their senior vice presidents, which stated, Xtel would like to inform the Transportation Committee and would like the neighbors to know that the plan has always been for the primary construction entrance for the duration of the construction to be on First Avenue between 79th and 80th Streets. Currently, the excavation work, which is being done at the south end of the site, requires the entrance to be on 79th Street. The shift to First Avenue is anticipated to occur at the end of March or early April. There will likely be some need to occasionally use 79th Street. Should there be any unforeseen site or in-street utility conditions requiring alteration to the logistics, we will communicate this as soon as commercially reasonable.
Okay. Is there any, so we have Rita, I think Rita and Rebecca may have wanted to raise some issues before we adjourn. Rita, did you want to say anything?
I have something, and if not, I could lay it out. It's not something that we haven't heard before. It has to do with light poles on East 91st Street. If you think it's not appropriate at this time, I could lay it over. But I do have one comment about these light bulbs with the 5G on. If I don't know what the distance is between the canisters in order to get a signal, but if only these canisters could only be used at corner light poles, it would not be in anyone's window. So do we ever want to say that they don't go in mid block as the picture that Will just showed us?
That's an interesting thought, Rita. I think what we ought to do is maybe see if we can get some more information and see what the radius is that these things cover, and whether they could be at the ends of blocks and things like that, as you say. I think that's certainly worth looking at. And maybe we can do that.
What I would like from the committee is a letter. It is shameful that I'm asking for the new lights on half of a block between Second Avenue and Third Avenue on East 91st Street. The lower half of the block, which has benches, a city bike dock, etc., is very dark because the lights, the trees grew taller than the light poles, and therefore the lights are in the trees. When they're in leaf, there's no light that is transmitted to the ground. Half the block was done 3 years ago, and they said they would come back. They were going to come back that day, the next day, and DOT never came back. We don't have LED lights on half of the block. That's all I want is the LED lights on the lower half of the block. Is
Okay.
that possible? It's a
Well-
safety issue.
Okay. Colleen, is that something you can, I know you must be aware of that issue. Colleen still here?
I believe Colleen signed off at the last couple of minutes.
Oh, okay. We'll raise that with DOT. Reed, I know you've raised it before, and then they should come back and do that, obviously.
But raising it doesn't do anything. What I was hoping for, and maybe not this session, but definitely by April, is a letter so that
Okay.
that officials know that all we're asking for the regular light changes that every street has gotten, and only half the street has gotten. So, I'm not asking for
Okay.
the moon.
All right. Well, I think we'll talk to Russell about that, and we probably that sounds like that we ought to be able to do that easily.
And I am happy to report that the Z-bricks have been replaced on East 91st Street, having nothing to do with DOT. It was the condo who paid for it to happen. And so therefore, this iconic block looks iconic, but only now halfway with lights. Thank you.
Hey, you're working on it. You were on the blocks for a long time, and it finally happened. That's great. So we'll get we'll hopefully we can help get the other thing done.
Chuck, I've had it. To the point, I mean, what are we saying? The city doesn't care that certain blocks can have lights and we can't have light. We have lights. They were here. They did it. They did half the block and were coming back. They never came back. All I want them to do is to come back.
Okay. All right. We'll see if we can help in this.
Thank you for letting me vent. I've really been pissed.
That's okay. Rebecca Dangor.
I was going to make a comment, but instead I'll move to adjourn.
Okay. Is there a second for that? I assume. Yes. Okay. All right. Well, without objection, we are adjourned, and I thank everyone. It's been a long meeting, and we'll see you at the next meeting.
Good night, everyone.